Chapter 565, Mistaken Identity. Kaiser flew out of the crowd while holding a giant hammer over his head. A streak of blue light was created. The tremendous amount of water attributed Saint force spilling from the hammer as it flew at Du Gufeng. Coming to a stop, Du Gufeng stared expressionlessly at the figure coming at him. Without looking at Kaiser himself, a burst of fire suddenly exploded from his body. It coiled around him with a sweltering heat that raised the temperature of the surrounding area. With the blaze burning all around his body, Du Gufeng looked as if he had transformed to become a god of fire. With his right hand held out, Du Gufeng clenched it into a fist, forcing the fire around him gather around it. With a swish of his hand, a ball made of fire immediately shot at Kaiser. Bang! The two attributes of opposing nature clashed against each other in midair with a loud explosion. The area gave a heavy shudder as the energy from the blast ran through it like an earthquake. Some of the bystanders were even forced back a step. Earth Saint Master, this man is an Earth Saint Master. Was Wu Yun always this strong? It's no wonder that he was able to stave off all of the great Saint Masters in this city 2 years ago. Only an Earth Saint Master would be able to fight him now. No wonder he was able to throw us off his tracks. He was an Earth Saint Master all this time. Dear heavens! I tried to track and fight an Earth Saint Master. It's a good thing he didn't fight us, or else none of us would have been left standing to find out that fact today. Loud gasps of shock could be heard everywhere as they stared at Du Gufeng in a new light. To be an Earth Saint Master in Fengyang City was to be one of the best. Respect was to be expected, and all other powers within the city would have to make way for one. Only a trifling 4 Earth Saint Masters lived in Fengyang City, and each one of them were leaders of a major power. When Wu Yun's strength had been revealed, many of the men who were presumptuous enough to want to attack him had immediately gave up that notion. An Earth Saint Master was not a power they could afford to mess with. Kaiser fell back down to the ground with a grim expression on his face. Wu Yun, who would have thought that your strength would make such a drastic change in 2 years? Becoming an Earth Saint Master, You've pulled fortune out from disaster, I see. With both hands clasped behind his back in a leisurely position, Du Gufeng merely stood with an empty expression in front of Kaiser. In his eyes there was a glint of a sneer and disdain. He didn't know who this Wu Yun was at all, but he wasn't an idiot. Connecting the thoughts with the strange plan Jian Chen had, he quickly made a rough guess that the person the man in front of him was talking about was Jian Chen. Seeing that Wu Yun did not speak, Kaiser continued to do so in his place. Wu Yun, while you may have managed to become an Earth Saint Master, you don't even hold a candle to the might of my Harito clan. I, Kaiser, extend the same offer I gave you 2 years ago. Hand over your battle skill to my Harito clan and we will not mistreat you any longer. Realize now that the ancestor of my clan is a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. A step more is all he needs to become a Heaven Saint Master. It won't even take another 20 years before my Harito clan becomes the strongest clan in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Kaiser's words had delivered yet another wave of shock to the people around him. Each and every one of them knew just how arduous and bitter it was to break through to become a Heaven Saint Master. If it would take the ancestor of the Harito clan just 20 years to become a Heaven Saint Master, that bit of information was simply unbelievable to hear. The Blue Wind Kingdom was in a decline now that they had lost several Heaven Saint Masters in the recent war. Only 4 of them were left, and if the Harito clan were to add 1 more to that number, then becoming one of the top 5 would not be implausible for them. A cold sneer appeared on Du Gufeng's face. I know many battle skills, but not the one you wish for. Kaiser was knocked for a loop at those words before an ecstatic look appeared on his face. Then bring out your strongest battle skill. Worry not, my Harito clan will not treat you unfairly. The sneer grew even larger as Du Gufeng stared down at Kaiser. The strongest battle skill I have are 2 heaven-tier battle skills, which one shall it be? What? 2 heaven-tier battle skills. Kaiser had immediately gone slack-jawed as he stared at Dugufeng in disbelief. Waves of emotions flowed from his heart like a series of tidal waves. Heaven-tier battle skills were extremely sparse. Even the strongest major powers of the Blue Wind Kingdom didn't own any heaven-tier battle skills. Dugufeng's words had not only caused Kaiser to be stunned, but also the people around him. Each one of them had gone blank in the face. He has a heaven-tier battle skill? Heavens, that can't be true. Out of the surrounding kingdoms, only the Changyang clan of the Jessen Kingdom has a heaven-tier battle skill. I've never heard of any other person in possession of a battle skill of the same magnitude. Pah! Even Heaven Saint Masters would kill to have just one. How is it that an Earth Saint Master like him would have two? I don't believe it for a second. Yeah, he's got to be lying. With everyone talking to one another, they were all convinced that Dugufeng didn't have a heaven-tier battle skill. Even Kaiser didn't believe that this 20-something-year-old youth in front of him had a heaven-tier battle skill. Taunting him, he said, "If you really have one, then why not show it for everyone to see? That's right, show this heaven-tier battle skill for us to see. Open our eyes to this new world. Show us what a heaven-tier battle skill looks like." As Kaiser finished speaking, everyone around him joined in conjunction with eyes that seemed to ridicule Dugufeng. Dugufeng only smiled coldly from where he stood. Looking behind Kaiser, he took notice of Jian Chen, Ming Dong, Tai Ta, and Yu Yu. They had just exited through the VIP entrance. Just barely after Jian Chen had stepped out from the passageway, he gave a small chuckle. Will wonders never cease? The auction has only just finished, yet there is already another spectacle to watch. What an exciting day this has been. Jian Chen had not spoken in a loud voice, but when he spoke, everyone had clearly heard his words. They turned to face him and the other three. Kaiser turned to look at Jian Chen. When he saw the handsome face of his eyes widened as he thought back to the Wu Yun of 2 years ago. Jian Chen's face-changing ability had fooled the eyes of many in Fengyang City, but he had still been forced to escape from the city using the wells and the passageways below. As a result, the herbs he had used to change his facial appearance had been completely washed away, allowing Kaiser to see Jian Chen's true face. Staring hard at the familiar face of Jian Chen, Kaiser slowly enunciated his next phrase word for word. "So, you're the real Wu Yun." Everyone was shocked once more when they heard what Kaiser had said. Looking at Jian Chen with bizarre eyes, none of them had ever expected to hear that they had nearly picked a fight with the wrong person. Striding into the crowd, Jian Chen revealed a cold smile on his face. "Yen Kaiser, you still remember me it seems. I didn't expect that. You are correct, I am the Wu Yun you threw off the cliff 2 years ago." With Jian Chen himself confirming who he was, everyone else had no other choice but to accept it. They had found the wrong person. This man who had sold the 2 Class 5 monster cores was not the same Wu Yun as 2 years ago. Several strong-looking men quickly walked forward to surround Jian Chen's group. One of the men gave an angry declaration. "Wu Yun, you've killed many men from my Yulan clan, an unforgivable crime. You will not leave Fengyang City alive." From the Haiming clan's group, a middle-aged man hurried to the clan head and whispered into his ear, "My lord, he is the one that injured the young master a few days ago." A bright light shined in the man's eyes as he replied, "I had not thought that it would be Wu Yun that injured my son. Peh, Wu Yun slaughtered many of our men 2 years ago. I shall make good on our debts, both old and new." With that, the man waved his hand and 24 of his men surrounded Jian Chen so tightly that not even water could escape. Studying Jian Chen's group, Kaiser could only detect the strength of Tai Ta and Yu Yu. Ming Dong and Jian Chen on the other hand had completely hidden their presences. They made it so Kaiser had no way to determine their strength. However, Kaiser still hadn't thought the 2 of them to be a threat. They were young after all. They shouldn't be a match for him no matter how strong they were for their age. Kaiser sneered, "Wu Yun, you've arrived at a good timing, I've nearly made ill with the wrong person." Whirling around to face Du Gufeng, Wu Yun hesitated for a moment before cupping his hands together. "Dear brother, I mistook you for another. I hope you forgive this sin of mine. Perhaps in the future when there is time, please come to Lus City and have a seat with my Harito clan." If this person in front of him had been Wu Yun, then Kaiser would have killed him without thinking of the consequences. After throwing Wu Yun off a cliff 2 years ago, the hatred between the two would never be washed away without one of them being killed. With him mistaking the wrong person, Kaiser had immediately felt apologetic to this Earth Saint Master. The Harito clan would view an expert like this with high regards. Du Gufeng refused to say anything, so Kaiser had decided not to mince any more words. He turned to face everyone else. "I, Kaiser, have unfinished business with Wu Yun. Please allow my Harito clan to deal with this." Angst displayed a dark expression on his face as he stared at Jian Chen. "These 4 are the ones in booth 8 that refused to stand down against my Harito clan. Everyone saw what happened in the auction house yourselves. I hope that you will give us some face and allow the 2 of us to deal with them." Chapter 566, A Full Display of Might. 1. Upon hearing that Jian Chen was the one in the 8th booth that stole the Class 5 monster core, Kaiser's eyes grew even darker. With clenched teeth, he spat, "So even now you refuse to stand down for my Harito clan. Humph, yet another sin to add onto your unforgivable crimes." Turning to the head of the Haiming clan, Kaiser cupped his hands together. "My apologies, but this is a matter that my Harito clan must take care of. I hope that you will turn this matter over to me. Rest assured, my Harito clan will definitely take vengeance for your clan." A white-robed man with an unordinary air to him walked out from the crowd with a smile. "Kaiser, this one is rather skeptical and hopes that you will provide an explanation about why you hold such a deep hatred for this person. Even if it is what happened with the auction, your hatred for such a person shouldn't be as deep as this." This middle-aged man was a figure that even Angst and Kaiser would not offend on a whim. He was the head of the Feng family, another major party of the Blue Wind Kingdom that rivaled the Harito clan in power. Angst looked to Kaiser, for only he could answer that question. Hesitating for a moment, Kaiser replied, "Master Feng, this matter involves an event from many years ago that involved the interest of my clan. Please forgive me for not finding this an appropriate place to explain my hatred. What could it possibly be for you to not say it here?" "Kaiser, I, Ing Chongkong, feel quite curious on this matter as well. Just what in the world did this brother do to offend you for you to hate him to the death?" Another voice could be heard from behind as the Spirit Hawk mercenaries walked out of the auction house with their captain leading the group. Kaiser's face darkened, but he said nothing in response. The head of the Feng family looked to Du Gufeng with a small smile. "I believe everyone here saw you mistake this brother here for Wu Yun from 2 years ago. Furthermore, you even charged at him and demanded for him to hand over his battle skill. Perhaps Wu Yun has a battle skill that your Harito clan has taken a liking to?" The words of the head of the Feng family caused Kaiser's face to twitch. "Master Feng, without concrete evidence, please do not make random accusations." Kaiser knew that if a Saint Master was capable of slaughtering several great Saint Masters, then the battle skill would have to be an Earth Tier 1 at the very least. If news of that were to escape, then practically every single expert within the Blue Wind Kingdom would be in an uproar and fight for such a battle skill. If a faction with a Heaven Saint Master were to interfere, then the Harito clan would have to sit idly on the side. Within the scope of the Blue Wind Kingdom, an Earth-tier battle skill was something that every powerful faction would deem highly important. Even the Heaven Saint Masters within the kingdom would have an Earth-tier battle skill as their strongest skill. Laughing, the head of the Feng family looked to Jian Chen. "My brother, was what I said true or not?" Jian Chen displayed a rather meaningful smile on his face as he replied, "Correct. 2 years ago Yen Kaiser of the Harito clan saw that I had a battle skill, and set out to kill me in order to obtain it for his own clan." Jian Chen's words caused Kaiser's face to grow even darker. It was now that he knew that this matter with the battle skill was no longer as secretive as he would like. With so many people from so many powerful factions gathered here, even he wouldn't be able to kill them all to maintain the secret even if he wanted to. Little brother, I don't know what battle skill it is that you have, but if it can make even the Harito clan drool at the mouth for it, it can't be a low one at all. Ing Chongkong spoke with a serious expression as if concerned. Everyone there could already imagine that such a battle skill enough for the Harito clan to covet it surely had to be a very qualitative one. Such a realization had been enough to ignite the burning greed within everyone's heart as they began to covet it as well. Seeing the avaricious glint in everyone's eyes, Jian Chen gave a disdainful sneer as he wrapped his hands in front of his chest. My battle skill is a high earth tier battle skill. As if a bombshell had gone off, everyone was startled to hear that it was a high earth tier battle skill. Shortly after that news was revealed, the breathing of everyone there had grown progressively more coarse as they stared at Jian Chen with drool practically leaking from their mouths. A battle skill like that would be considered as one of the strongest within the Blue Wind Kingdom. The expression on Kaiser's face drastically changed, almost like he was filled with regret. If he had known that Jian Chen possessed a high earth tier battle skill, then he would have done his best to ensure that Jian Chen wouldn't have been able to say a word. Now that news had made its way out, there was no way that the strongest of the kingdom would remain uninvolved. Kaiser, why didn't you tell me about such an important thing earlier, you bastard? Now look what you've done, you leaked your own secret. Enx howled furiously at Kaiser. With the situation quickly spiraling out of his expectations, Kaiser was already filled with regret at his own impulsiveness. He shouldn't have mentioned the battle skill at all when Wu Yun had appeared. How unexpected that you possess a high earth tier battle skill, brother. I would never have suspected such an event like this. In our Blue Wind Kingdom, I'm afraid less than 10 of those exist. Ing Chongkong boomed with laughter. There was a bright and warm look in his eyes. A high earth tier battle skill was enough to tempt any person. Slowly schooling his emotions, the head of the Feng family spoke with sparkling eyes. Brother, having such a battle skill like that would be a burden to you. It would be undoubtedly dangerous to continue on in such a manner, but I have a particularly problem-free method of solving that. My Feng family has a decent relationship with the strongest sect within the Blue Wind Kingdom, the Ziji sect. Why not sell it to them? They will guarantee your well-being. In the case that you have the Ziji sect supporting you, then no one within the Blue Wind Kingdom would dare try to cause trouble for you. Give it some thought. The master is correct. Young brother, the Ziji sect is very strong and has a heaven saint master presiding over it. Within the Blue Wind Kingdom, they are most likely the strongest group. If they are behind you, then none of the other smaller factions would dare cause trouble with you. This is something that you wouldn't even have to worry about being taken advantage of. An elder that had been standing right next to the head of the Feng family spoke. His voice seemed meaningful and sincere, as if completely worried about Jian Chen's well-being. Kaiser's and Enx's faces turned to the color of pigskin in their anger and gloom. The Ziji sect was one of the strongest factions within the kingdom, and were connected with the royal family themselves. Such a power was not one that the Harito clan could easily scale up against. Even if the Harito clan's ancestor managed to break through to become a heaven saint master, they would still not be able to stand up to the Ziji sect. Not only was the Ziji sect far more powerful and richer than the Harito clan, but the Heaven Saint Master was an established individual with plenty of power. Everyone else had been startled to hear mention of the Ziji sect as well. Each one of them sighed as they realized that if Jian Chen were to seek asylum with the Ziji sect, then they would lose this chance of earning such a strong battle skill. Jian Chen smiled, I thank you for your kind intentions, but the high earth tier battle skill doesn't require any protections. There is no need for Lord Feng to worry. The expression on the man's face grew taut as he replied in concern, young brother, you must think this through carefully. An earth tier battle skill is extremely precious. Without the Ziji sect to safeguard you, a multitude of troubles will surely come your way. Your life could very well be at stake here. The head of the Feng family had wished that this person would allow himself to hand over the battle skill to the Ziji sect. If that were to be done, then the Ziji sect would undoubtedly see the Feng family in a better light, and this matter would help serve to bridge the gap between the two factions. Without hesitation, Jian Chen shook his head. This is a problem that doesn't require your concern. Whatever small problems come my way will be dealt with by my people. Seeing Jian Chen decline the offer to be protected by the Ziji sect, was met with the sparkling eyes of everyone around him. Each one of them felt their hopes reignite within their hearts as they realized that this was yet another chance to take the battle skill. If they were the ones to hand over the battle skill to the powerful factions, then they would gain benefits as well as being able to copy down the battle skill for themselves first. Wu Yun, you killed many men from my Yulan clan 2 years ago. How do you plan to explain that? The head of the Yulan clan accused. Thinking back to their previous grievances, he was prepared to fight for the battle skill. You've killed plenty of men from my Haiming clan as well as harming my dear son grievously. I will not allow my clan to stand idly by the side and watch. The head of the Haiming clan spoke. There is also my Yang sect. 2 years ago, my sect fell prey to your hands. Today, this debt of ours will be wiped clean with your blood. There is also my Tianmu clan. 2 factions that had been involved with Jian Chen had begun to announce their own grievances with him one after another. With everyone taking advantage of the situation to advance their own agendas, they were planning to use what had transpired 2 years ago in order to try and obtain the Earth Tier battle skill. As for the ones who had traveled to the city from far away, they only stood by the sidelines in silence as they observed the situation unfold in front of them. With everyone throwing their lot with the people who held grievances, Kaiser knew that there was no time to waste. Otherwise, something else might possibly happen to alter the situation once more. With no time to spare, he clutched his hammer and flew at Jian Chen with a cry, "Wu Yun, we may as well settle our debts here and now." The same time Kaiser had moved, Dugu Feng had moved into action as well. With a bright red sword of fire, he moved without hesitation to slash down onto Kaiser. Sensing the strangeness of the situation behind him, Kaiser's face darkened as he whirled around, and used his hammer to block the incoming sword strike. With the 2 Saint weapons making contact, there was a tremendous surge of Saint force. It rippled and destroyed the streets as the energy washed over the ground. A single strike later, Kaiser was sent flying back 3 steps worth of distance while Dugu Feng stood in his original position without shaking at all. The one at a disadvantage was already clear to see. Chapter 567, A Full Display of Might. 2. There was a grim expression on Kaiser's face as he stared aghast at Dugu Feng. The fact that Dugu Feng was an Earth Saint Master was surprising enough, but he didn't think that Dugu Feng would also be stronger than him by a decent amount. "Sire, what is the meaning of this? If it is for my earlier slight, this old man has already apologized to you, or was that not to your satisfaction?" Kaiser asked with a dark tone. Dugu Feng's strength was stronger than his own, causing him to feel slightly worried. A person like this was not to be fought against unless there was no other choice. Still clutching the flame sword, Dugu Feng stared expressionlessly at Kaiser. His eyes were brilliantly cold, but he did not speak a single word. Instead, he slowly walked toward Jian Chen's group in front of everyone's wide-open eyes, and stood resolutely right behind him. Now that they were greeted with such a sight, everyone had come to the startling realization that the 2 of them were of the same group. There was a very uncomfortable look on Kaiser's face as he connected the dots between the person he apologized to and Wu Yun. An extremely embarrassed look crept onto his face as he suddenly felt like palming his own forehead. "I didn't think that you 2 would be working together. Wu Yun, you have some stuff to you if you were able to bring an Earth Saint Master into your fold, but if you think a single one would be able to intimidate me, you are simply far too naive." Kaiser spoke with clenched teeth. Staring at Kaiser as if he was beneath him, Jian Chen sneered, "Who is the naive one, I wonder? You'll find out soon enough. Yen Kaiser, I will settle this 2-year debt of ours today." "Huh, that much is right. We will settle it once and for all. Not once have I ever thought that you would escape after being pushed down that cliff, but here you stand in front of me 2 years later. You must hate me tremendously for what happened that year, so I, Kaiser, will offer you a fair match. But the people here are too many for my liking. Why don't we go outside to settle this?" Kaiser smiled coldly in return. Now that the battle skill had been revealed, everyone was waiting for a chance to snatch it from Jian Chen. With the way things were now, the best way to grab a hold of it would be to wait until Jian Chen was dead or beaten, and then take the battle skill from his body. If there were no battle skills to be found, then he could still be taken home and interrogated. As a result, every single party here with a grudge against Jian Chen were fighting each other to be the first to announce their grudges. These announcements were in fear that someone else would take advantage and fight Jian Chen first for his battle skill. Fighting him in a fair battle and obtaining the battle skill after his defeat was what everyone planned on doing, Kaiser included. Jian Chen gave a light shake of his head to decline Kaiser's suggestion. "This place will do, it's a large enough area. I've not enough time to waste going with you to run off to some place." Staring coldly at everyone else around him, Jian Chen smiled, 2 years ago, I became an enemy to plenty of people here. So, now whomever has a grudge stand forward. We will sever that grudge here and now. Brat, you're being impudent. Don't think that because you hired an Earth Saint Master to help resolve your matters you'll be able to get away. You killed plenty of people from the 3 major clans of Fengyang City, not a single one of our clans will ever forgive you for that. Another 3 people distinguished themselves from the crowd as the 3 major clan heads of the city. In this current moment, the representatives of the 3 major clans had stepped in front of Jian Chen as the ones that would fight him. Only the lord of the city was left standing behind in silence. Sweeping his eyes around the place, Jian Chen asked in a calm manner, "Who else bears a grudge with me or desires my Earth-tier battle skill? Step forth now." By his last phrase, Jian Chen's voice had grown progressively colder. "Wu Yun, you rampant bastard. Do you think yourself to be a Heaven Saint Master? Even with so many of us here, you'd still dare to act in such a presumptuous manner? Do you mean to ignore us as if our existence isn't even worth noticing then?" One of the middle-aged men growled. With 3 of the major clans of Fengyang City and the 2 members from the Harito clan, there were already 5 Earth Saint Masters gathered in opposition. The very notion that Jian Chen dared to act in such a manner against 5 Earth Saint Masters angered them all greatly. Such an action was clearly disregarding their power, and for people that enjoyed the respect others gave them, this was an unbearable action. The tiger cub sat quietly in its spot in Jian Chen's robes. Both of its eyes were filled with an intelligent light. It glanced around the place filled with curiosity. Affectionately rubbing the fur of the tiger cub, Jian Chen gave a smile that felt more cold than it was warm. "Those with no business here should stand down or risk injury. Ming Dong, Dugu Feng, whomever stands against us, slaughter them." Without a word, Dugu Feng flew forward with fire billowing from his flaming sword as he hefted it into the air. In an instant, he had already flew toward the great Saint Masters, and aimed his sword at their chests to successfully bisect some of them in half. Ming Dong had not hesitated either. As soon as Jian Chen gave his commands, Ming Dong took out his own saint weapon, and transformed into an azure light that flew off with unbelievable speed toward Kaiser. Throughout his actions, there had been an intense killing intent within the eyes of Ming Dong. The sudden actions of the 2 men had caused a war to form between both sides, which forced the surrounding bystanders to quickly run back a few steps. This was to avoid being caught in the battle by accident. As a user of Wind Saint Force, Ming Dong was extremely fast. All Kaiser himself could see was a blur of azure light before a single longsword appeared right in front of his chest. In his panic and shock, Kaiser brought his hammer up to narrowly defend himself against the sword stroke. Bang! The accumulated energy within Ming Dong's sword burst forth upon impact with Kaiser's hammer in a far larger scale than what had exploded from Kaiser's weapon. Consequently, Kaiser was sent flying into the air before landing on the ground roughly 20 meters away. His feet stumbled one after another as he tried to stabilize himself. It had taken another 10 or so meters before he was finally able to stop himself from falling over. Whenever he had stepped on the ground to stop himself, cracks had formed from the amount of force he had used. One area of marble had been reduced to dust. But how can this be? You're a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. Kaiser gasped in shock at the youthful face of Ming Dong. He couldn't believe what he had experienced, and was having a small panic attack within his heart. His face rapidly paled as he properly registered the strength of the youth. His strength was practically on the same level of strength as the head of the Harido clan. From the very beginning, Ming Dong had hid his strength so that no one that looked at him would know that he was an Earth Saint Master. Now that he had begun to fight, the strength that he was hiding had finally been revealed. This reveal had been world-shaking to everyone who had initially thought him to be a mere great Saint Master, and many of them still couldn't quite believe it when they looked again at how young he was. The head of the Feng family had been surprised as well to see Ming Dong's strength. It's no wonder, if that youth is a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master, then there is no question about why Wu Yun was so calm in such a situation. If he can rely on a figure like that, then no faction here would be able to last against a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. The headmaster of the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion rejoiced to himself in secret as well. I had no idea that Wu Yun would have someone as strong as him. 6th cycle Earth Saint Masters are very rare in the Blue Wind Kingdom. All it takes is a single step more to become a Heaven Saint Master. It's a good thing I did not step into this affair as well, or else I could have very well died here today. The Vice Headmaster was gleeful as well. Headmaster, you are truly wise beyond belief. Our pavilion has escaped this calamity in one piece. We should step back a bit and watch how these 3 clans will survive this ordeal. A 6th cycle Earth Saint Master stands a very good chance against 5 Earth Saint Masters. If he holds a battle skill, then, the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion Headmaster sighed and spoke no more. There wasn't a need to finish his sentence for anyone to understand. The surrounding crowd had given a large space for the group in the middle to fight it out. The appearance of a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master symbolized a truly powerful force that everyone greatly feared. Even the major factions of a first-class city wouldn't dare offend such a figure. Chapter 568, A Full Display of Might, 3. A short amount of time later, Dugu Feng had managed to kill nearly a dozen great Saint Masters and Saint Masters before finally being stalled by the 3 Earth Saint Masters from the 3 major clans of Fengyang City. They started a fierce battle in the middle of the streets, and whenever both sides clashed against one another, tremendous surges of energy wash over the surrounding area in every direction. The nearby buildings that were struck by the waves of energy suffered tremendous amounts of damages as a result. Even the Heavenly Phoenix auction house had not escaped disaster. The giant doors had been unable to endure the surge of energy that struck it. It shook endlessly. Dust fell to the ground as fractures formed everywhere nearby. The battle between the Earth Saint Masters had gotten progressively more intense, forcing the audience to take yet another few steps back to guarantee their safety. A wide open area had been left behind for the 2 sides to battle it out, but the men of weaker strengths had still been slightly injured by the whiplash of energy that exploded from the battle. Ming Dong's current focus was entirely on Kaiser. With each strike, he would force back Kaiser step by step without any hesitation in his movements. Taking advantage of any opening, he would draw close to Kaiser with blinding speed. His own longsword would every so often strike at Kaiser's chest with an astounding amount of energy. Kaiser was merely a 1st cycle Earth Saint Master in strength, a ranking that was vastly inferior to a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. Just before he could recover his footing after the previous strike, Ming Dong had suddenly reappeared right in front of him. With a ruthless stab of his sword, Ming Dong pierced straight through Kaiser's chest. The pain from the stab had forced Kaiser to let out a muffled grunt of pain as blood drained from his face. Overwhelmed with shock as he looked at Ming Dong, the youth gave Kaiser a sensation of fear that was far stronger than what the head of the Harito clan gave him. A merciless smile appeared on Ming Dong's face as he watched Kaiser's reaction. Without giving him any time to react further than that, Ming Dong began to inject his Saint Force through his sword and into Kaiser's chest. Directly infiltrating his body, the Saint Force instantly began to destroy his internal organs. A wretched scream of pain emerged from Kaiser's mouth as his face contorted in pain. The destruction of his internal organs had given him such anguish, and the pain from the long sword piercing his chest had been far more than he could possibly endure in silence. After a short bout of battle, Ming Dong had grievously injured an Earth Saint Master to the point that the opposing party was unable to continue battling. Such a success was so astonishing that the spectators were rendered speechless for half a day. An Earth Saint Master was the strongest position held in Fengyang City due to there only being a trifling amount of them. For the rest of the city, an Earth Saint Master was a tree one could never hope to scale. Thus, everyone felt a tremendous shock when they watched such a strong individual be treated so weakly. Kaiser! Enks cried out. It hadn't even been several seconds since Kaiser's battle with Ming Dong had started, and Enks didn't think that Ming Dong would be as strong as he was. Within 2 exchanges, he had beaten the Earth Saint Master Kaiser into submission. Without any more hesitation, Enks took out his own saint weapon to charge at Ming Dong to see if he could stop Ming Dong and save Kaiser. Despite the fact that he was more than aware that his opponent was a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master, now was not the time to be afraid. There had been a flash of killing intent once more in Ming Dong's eyes when he saw Enks come charging at him. With a sneer, Ming Dong flickered out of sight and then reappeared right in front of Enks with his longsword stabbing outwards. Enks was stronger than Kaiser by a decent amount since he was a 2nd cycle Earth Saint Master. This meant that there was still a very substantial difference between the two, but he would still be completely dominated by Ming Dong. Under the assault of Ming Dong, Enks found himself unable to do anything but defend. "Sire, I have no idea what great price Wu Yun has offered for you to risk offending my Harito clan, but as long as you don't interfere any longer, my Harito clan will offer you just as much Wu Yun has offered you. There is no worth to making an enemy out of my Harito clan. The ancestor of our clan is on the verge of becoming a Heaven Saint Master and turning our clan into one of the best clans in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Why not exchange our weapons of war for banners of silk instead? We can kill Wu Yun together and plunder the battle skill for both of us." Enks cried out. He knew that he wasn't a match for Ming Dong. Therefore, he could only hope to deter and tempt him with the might of the Harito clan so that some fear or greed might take hold in his opponent's heart. There was no way that Enks would know just how deep the relationship between Jian Chen and Ming Dong was. His words here were completely useless and only served to anger Ming Dong even more. "Your words are enough for me to wish to kill you today at all costs." Ming Dong spoke with an icy tone. Unbridled fury could be seen in his eyes and the sword in his hand increased in strength. With Ming Dong fighting with his all, the pressure on Enks tremendously increased. With 3 weak exchanges, Enks' arm was lopped off by Ming Dong. Ah! With one of his arms severed, Enks let out a miserable howl that spread throughout the area with a hair-raising sound. This was what an Earth Saint Master sounded like when in pain. The intense pain had dulled Enks' nerves and reactions as a result, causing his reaction speed to take a tremendous drop. While he was trying to control the pain, a flash of azure light blurred past his eyes, and in the next moment, Enks had lost all feeling he had in his body. His pain-filled cries had stopped as well. One could only see his head separate from his body in a high arc spinning 2 meters into the air. It came flying down with blood sprinkling the entire area. The bystanders could only watch with eyes wide open in shock as they watched the spectacle in disbelief. None of them had imagined that in the short period of time this battle had taken place, an Earth Saint Master would fall so easily and in such a miserable state. His entire head had been decapitated from his body so that he wouldn't even pass on to the next life with a whole body. Even the visitors from the first-class city couldn't believe their eyes at what they saw. Having witnessed an Earth Saint Master fall in such a manner was a tremendous attack on the perspective people had about Earth Saint Masters. On the other hand, the 3 Earth Saint Masters fighting with Dugu Feng had been subjected to shock as well. They were quick to regain their wits before glancing at each other. With a knowing nod to one another, they abandoned their fight with Dugu Feng and flew toward Jane Chen and Yu Yu in an attempt to pressure both Ming Dong and Dugu Feng. Seeing that the 3 men weren't even trying to escape and were instead running for Jian Chen, Ming Dong and Dugu Feng finally cracked open a mocking smile. Not even moving to stop them, the 2 of them charged toward the others that had took a step forward earlier, for they had been ordered by Jian Chen to slay whoever came forward. Emotionless for a brief moment, Jian Chen watched the 3 Earth Saint Masters run at him as a cold sneer that gradually made its way on his face. Lifting his finger, 3 rays of sword qi extended from his fingertips and shot toward the 3 enemies. Caught off guard, the 3 of them were stabbed straight through their chests. The sword qi remained within their chests, causing havoc with their internal organs and destroying them. Suffering such a tremendous amount of damage, the 3 men came to a grinding stop as their faces completely drained of color. Some blood flew out of their mouths. Sensing that their internal organs had been destroyed by sword qi, they each had a look of despair appear on their faces. The destruction of their internal organs wasn't enough to kill them immediately, but they would die nonetheless. Unless an extremely advanced Radiant Saint Master was on hand to heal them, they would die. Within Fengyang City, there was no such Radiant Saint Master to help them. Soon after the Earth Saint Masters fell, the rest of the remaining Great Saint Masters had been rendered defenseless by Ming Dong and Dugu Feng. By their hands, dozens of men had been killed and the streets had been dyed with their blood. The 3 Earth Saint Master were left kneeling on the ground as the remaining amount of blood in their bodies had begun to drain. Shock filled their entire system as they each looked up to Jian Chen unconvinced that this had truly happened to them. Not a single one of them would have possibly imagined that Jian Chen's strength was even more terrifying than the 2 Earth Saint Masters helping him. None of the 3 had even seen what those 3 rays of light were. Ming Dong forced the grievously injured Kaiser to kneel in front of Jian Chen. "Brother, what do you plan to do with him?" Ashen with defeat, Kaiser knew that using the Harito clan to intimidate Jian Chen was useless since Jian Chen himself possessed a strength that wouldn't need to fear the Harito clan. Staring frostily at Kaiser, Jian Chen smiled. "Yen Kaiser, here we stand today with our debts from 2 years ago complete. Your Harito clan and the 3 major clans of Fengyang City not only tried to take what is mine, but you even tried to make me a prisoner. I have never forgotten this debt for the past 2 years, and now today it is finally over." Yen Kaiser slowly lifted his head to look at Jian Chen's young face. Kaiser's face was very terrifying to see since it lacked blood because of the severe wounds he had sustained. "If I had known about this day earlier, then I would have chased down that cliff to make sure you really died." Kaiser spoke with clenched teeth. "Do you wish to die?" Ming Dong barked furiously and slammed a fist against Kaiser's head, causing the skin of his head to spill blood. There was a frosty light in Jian Chen's eyes as he smiled. "It's unfortunate the world doesn't have medicine for regret. Time cannot flow backwards either, no roads are left open for you anymore." Having said that, Jian Chen waved his hand. "Kill him." Without hesitation, a blade of Wind Saint Force materialized in Ming Dong's hand before he ruthlessly slammed it into Kaiser's head. With the Saint Force entering his head, Kaiser's soul was destroyed. With nary a grunt or sound, Kaiser's body weakly dropped to the ground, following the footsteps of Anx. Turning to the 3 Earth Saint Masters of the major clans of Fengyang City, Jian Chen revealed a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Now, wouldn't the three of you say that I still have a debt to finish with you three as well? Chapter 569, The End of Vengeance. The three Earth Saint Masters of Fengyang City were representatives of the three major clans. When they heard what Jian Chen said, they could only look up at him. Our internal organs are gone, there is no chance of us living for much longer. Whether you kill us or torture us, there is no need for you to say anything more. Smiling, Jian Chen replied, You cannot blame me for your current state of being. You can only blame your own avarice. Everything that happened today was from you seeking trouble with me and no one else. The only regret I have is that my strength was not enough. Otherwise, the one kneeling on the ground today would have been you and not us. One of them spat. They had all thrown caution to wind. There was no need to fear Jian Chen any longer since they were all dead men walking. Jian Chen nodded his head. Yes, there is nothing wrong with what you say. If I were weaker than you three, then the one kneeling here would perhaps be me. In this world, it goes without saying that power is equal to might. With that, Jian Chen turned back to look at Tai Ta. He was stone-faced as stood before the bloody streets filled with corpses. Tai Ta was no stranger to blood and gore, but that was only when magical beasts were involved. Streets filled with the corpses of humans was a first for him, however. As such, it had been a situation his heart found hard to stomach. Jian Chen sighed. With Tai Ta's straightforward attitude, it would take a decent amount of time for him to adjust to the Tianyuan continent and how it worked. Finally, Jian Chen turned back to look at the three clan heads. From today on, Fengyang City will no longer have your three clans. To alleviate you of your pains, I will send you off. There were many clans within Fengyang City. The power of their clans would quickly transfer with the deaths of the three Earth Saint Masters. Gently lifting his right hand, Jian Chen shot forth three bright rays of azure and violet sword chi from his finger. The three rays of sword chi quickly embedded themselves into the heads of each person and extinguished their spirits. Even a Heaven Saint Master wouldn't be able to survive such a stroke. The bodies of the three clan heads collapsed to the ground as if their strings had been cut. In a few seconds, the four Earth Saint Masters of Fengyang City had been reduced to a single one. Only the Lord of the city was left alive. From his position far away from the situation, the Lord of Fengyang grieved as he watched the three Earth Saint Masters killed. Now that they had died, the might of Fengyang City had decreased by a substantial amount. Everything that had happened was something he would have to accept. He didn't have the power to change it after all. He had not spoken a single word. Even though three major power holders had been killed, he didn't dare mention a word about it. Jian Chen and the group of people with him had already displayed a tremendous amount of power that would meet no resistance from the Lord of Fengyang City. Thus, he remained silent without even thinking about making a move. The fact that Jian Chen had killed three Earth Saint Masters with a lift of his finger was an extremely jaw-dropping experience to those who witnessed it. It was so utterly inconceivable and mind-boggling that they couldn't help but look at Jian Chen in a radically different light. Originally, they had all thought that Jian Chen would be as strong as he was 2 years ago, and that there wouldn't be any major changes since then. Even if he was a talented genius, becoming a great Saint Master would be an outstanding feat, but becoming an Earth Saint Master was just impossible since Jian Chen looked far too young. Suddenly, everyone in the audience realized the reason why Jian Chen had been so calm in front of the Harito clan and the three major clan heads. It was not because he could rely on the Earth Saint Masters, Ming Dong and Dugu Feng. The real reason was his own strength was so terrifyingly strong that there wasn't a need for him to make a move himself. The visitors that had come from some of the first-class cities regarded him with serious eyes, but everyone else felt sweat on their foreheads. Their hearts were wildly pounding. When they had learned that he possessed a battle skill, they had been filled with greed and couldn't help but decide to stick their hands into the pot. With a convenient excuse and with the Harito and the three major clans providing support, they had felt more than ready at first. Now that they were fully aware Jian Chen's strength, everyone could only feel a deep amount of sorrow and regret. Some felt overjoyed that they did not speak out at first, otherwise, they would be yet another casualty lying on the ground. Looking around, Jian Chen's eyes hovered on the group from the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion for a moment before turning away. The group had been extremely nervous when their eyes met. They had felt true fear in that moment, worried that Jian Chen would start trouble with them next. If he could kill an Earth Saint Master without a problem, then the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion would have no chance of defending themselves. Jian Chen displayed a smile on his face as he looked around. The ones that wanted to plunder my items from me in the past can't possibly be this few. If there is still something anyone wishes to take from me, by all means step forward. Not even a cricket made a sound from the crowd. Eventually, a white-robed elder with equally white hair came walking forward with clasped hands. Esteemed hero, I am the headmaster of the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion. I represent the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion when I offer my utmost apologies for what happened 2 years ago. I hope someone as great as you are will forgive and forget the offenses from such a lowly power. My Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion may be a third-rate power, but should there be anything we can do, then by all means instruct us as you see fit. I swear that the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion will do as you say faithfully. The headmaster spoke in a very honest and humble manner as he offered his apologies to Jian Chen. He was more than aware that this was the only way of guaranteeing the survival of the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion. The ones that had chased Jian Chen around the city 2 years ago had been killed by Ming Dong and Du Gufeng. The three major clans, the Yulan clan, and the Mutian family were as good as gone. From the crowd, the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion was the only remaining power left. Seeing how magnanimous and apologetic the headmaster had been and remembering how the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion hadn't done a thing to him in the past, Jian Chen had no reason to be petty to them. Jian Chen may have a grudge against many, but I am not a narrow-minded man. If the headmaster is sincere in his apologies, then I will not stop you. As if granted a tremendous pardon, the group from the Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion's faces brightly lit up. Many thanks for your favor. My Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion cannot thank you enough for choosing to spare us. Whatever you need, it would be our honor to do it for you. The headmaster gracefully responded. Having seen the gigantic power Jian Chen wielded, the headmaster had nearly sworn allegiance to him. Jian Chen could tell what the headmaster was feeling from his voice, but he said nothing about it. The Flowing Cloud Sword Pavilion was an inferior power within the kingdom without a single Earth Saint Master to their name. A power like that did not even need to be looked at. Du Gufeng, go and bring back the money obtained from selling the 2 Class 5 monster cores. Jian Chen commanded Du Gufeng. Du Gufeng gave a nod of his head before walking into the auction house without a sound. Ming Dong took the space rings the 5 Earth Saint Masters wore. In total, he had obtained 3 space rings and 2 space belts. When Ming Dong took out 5 gleaming purple cards, he revealed a huge smile on his face. With these 5 purple cards, there has to be at least several 100,000 purple coins. Hee, now I am a rich man too. Jian Chen couldn't help but force a smile when he heard what Ming Dong said. A 6th cycle Earth Saint Master lacking money was certainly a very strange occurrence. Not too long later, Du Gufeng came back out with the profits he had earned from selling the 2 Class 5 monster cores. Then along with Jian Chen, he and the others left the scarred-up area. Yulian could be seen standing on a balcony in the auction hall where she could clearly look over the situation. I didn't think that the Wu Yun, who was chased mercilessly from 2 years ago, would make such a triumphant return. Not only did he kill 2 Earth Saint Masters from the Harito clan, he was also able to kill the 3 Earth Saint Masters from the 3 major clans. This must be his retribution. Yulian muttered to herself as she stared at Jian Chen. Then turning back to look at the ruined gates of the Heavenly Phoenix auction house, she revealed a pained look on her face. Looks like a good amount of our profit today will be going to fix that. When the surrounding audience saw Jian Chen's group starting to walk away, the ones that were in his immediate path had quickly moved to get out of his way. When Jian Chen's shadow finally disappeared from sight, noise returned to the area in the form of a huge clamor. 3 of the strongest 4 people of Fengyang City had been killed. That alone was a heaven-shaking source of information. I didn't think that the brothers in the 8th booth would be that strong. I made a mistake in judgment, it seems. The captain of the Spirit Hawk mercenaries sighed. No one could have possibly imagined that the youths that he had been chatting with earlier would be so strong. It was unbelievable to the utmost degree. Not too long after Jian Chen's group returned to their inns to rest, news about the heads of the 3 major clans in the city made its way around. Such a tremendous piece of information led to an equally large reaction, leaving everyone who heard it stunned in disbelief. Chapter 570. The change in the Yun family. News of what had transpired inside and outside the Heavenly Phoenix auction house quickly made its way to head of the Yun family. When he heard that the head of the Haiming clan had been killed, he was stupefied. But how? How is this possible? Not only was the head of the Haiming clan killed, the heads of the other 2 major clans were killed as well. They were all Earth Saint Masters though. The head of the Yun family muttered in dismay. It was very hard for him to believe this recent bit of information, and his heart was still finding it very shocking even now. A young woman wearing a red skirt walked into the room with a look of discomfort on her face. Father, I've just heard that the heads of the 3 major clans were killed off, is that true? It's drivel. That's what it is. The 3 of them were all Earth Saint Masters. Who in Fengyang City could possibly kill all 3 of them? It has to be false. Men. Go out and investigate the truth behind this matter and report back to me. The head of the Yun family boomed with an irritated command. Yes, my lord. Your subordinate will go make the inquiry straight away. The guard stationed in the room immediately ran off to verify the reports. It did not take long for the man to come back to give his report. With a frightened face, he said, My lord, the news was not falsified at all. The heads of the 3 major clans have all been killed. Their bodies litter the streets next to the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. Many other experts were killed as well. Thunderstruck by this disastrous turn of events, the head of the Yun family had originally took the news to be a rumor and didn't believe it. Now hearing the news from the mouth of his subordinate left him with no other choice but to believe it. Despite it being hard to stomach, he simply couldn't deny it any longer. Is that true? Did you personally see the corpses of the 3 heads? Lord Yun's hands clasped tightly onto the soldier's shoulders as if trying to choke out the truth. Why yes, my lord. It is absolutely true. Your servant personally bore witness to the 3 corpses. There is no way this is not true. The soldier spoke in alarm. Now that 3 major individuals of Fengyang City were dead, the soldier didn't know what to think. This was as unexpected as a bolt of lightning from clear skies. Dazed, the lord broke away from the soldier with an absent-minded look. His Yun family was indeed a power within Fengyang City, but there were still plenty of other parties and mercenary groups that were stronger than him. The Yun family as it was a party that was better kept under the table than on top. He had originally planned for his family to tie themselves to the Haiming clan to give them some semblance of power. The betrothment between the 2 powers had already been prepared, all they had to do was wait for the marriage. Then the Yun family would skyrocket in power. However, the Yun family would be equally struck by this disastrous turn of events that befell the Haiming clan with all their Earth Saint Masters being killed. The lord of the Yun family knew that if by chance the head Earth Saint Master was killed, then the Haiming clan would lose their status as one of the top 3 clans and drop by an abnormal amount. Their dreams of rising exponentially in power and status had been dashed, turning into nothing in a single stroke. In other words, the fall of the Haiming clan had meant the chance of the Yun family becoming successful significantly fell. When the red-skirted woman heard that the Haiming clan had lost their leader, she was excited. For a moment, she hesitated before asking, "Father, now that the Haiming clan has lost their Earth Saint Master and a good amount of their stronger men, their power has fallen. The benefits we would gain by associating with them would be trivial. Do you think that we should annul the betrothment we have with them as well? Belay that." The Lord immediately dashed the young woman's hopes. "You may be right. The Haiming clan has lost their Earth Saint Master and are no longer as strong as before, but even as that stands, they hold a plethora of information about the inner workings of the city. No other power can match that. Our Yun family would still benefit from this marriage, so don't go around dreaming of such an impractical reality." An unusual amount of frost had appeared within the woman's eyes with those words, but the man did not notice the change. The drastic turn of events had been a huge blow to the development of the Yun family, giving the man a tremendous headache. Letting out a heavy sigh, the man walked to his desk. "Yun Lian, fetch your father a cup of tea." "Yes." The young woman replied before moving to prepare a cup of tea for her father. Then standing behind her father, she began to dutifully give him a massage as expected from the offspring of a parent. Bringing the cup up to his lips, the lord of the Yun family had only just taken a sip from his cup of tea when his daughter began to suddenly radiate murderous intent. A delicate-looking dagger slid into her hand before she ruthlessly stabbed it into the back of her father. Tzk. Under the unflinching hand of the woman, the dagger buried itself so deeply within the man that not even the blade could be seen. The man let out a pained cry as the cup of tea in his hand fell to the table. He too was a man that practiced and cultivated saint force, consequently, he possessed a quick reaction speed. He immediately rose from his chair and backhanded the woman away. She flew across the room before slamming into the wall on the opposite side, but the damage had been done. With a mouthful of blood, the man knew that he had been seriously injured. Pulling out the delicate dagger that had been embedded in his back, the man looked at his daughter in disbelief. "Yun Lian, what has gotten into you? What reason do you have to kill your own father?" Staggering back up, the woman's eyes were flowing with tears as she stared hatefully at the head of the Yun family. Clenching her teeth, she angrily replied, "You don't deserve to be called my father. You are a murderer, the murderer of my mother. Don't think I don't know what you did with my mother. I will take revenge for her." Startled, the man threw down the dagger in his hand in outrage. "Yun Lian, have you gone mad? What in the world are you saying?" By now, Yun Lian had lost all pretense of being the golden daughter she had been pretending to be. Letting out an angry shout, she said, "Yun Tian, don't you dare lie to me. Tell me how my mother died." With a serious expression, the man replied, "Did your mother not contract a serious illness? You lie. Don't try to deceive me. I know all about what happened that very night. I was watching from a secret spot. My mother didn't die from any illness. It was you that beat her to death. You killed my mother. You are not my father." She shrieked. "What are you saying? Where did you see such a thing?" The man questioned, aghast at what she was saying. Still staring hatefully at the man, the woman spat out the next line with clenched teeth, "That's right. You did something with my mother that night. From where I was hidden, I could see you beat mother to death. My mother was a cultivator. She also owned an Earth-tier battle skill. She became a cripple because her saint weapon had been shattered. When you found out that mother had a battle skill, you wanted her to hand it over to you, but she refused. It was through your fists that you attempted to beat it out of her, but with her saint weapon gone and her weakened body, she was killed when you took the beating too far. I know everything, don't even try to cheat your way out of this. You cannot lie to me. You have the face of a human, but the heart of a beast. By no means do you have the right to call yourself my father. Today is the day I will kill you to take revenge for my mother." A drastic change had overcome the man's face now as he stared gravely at his daughter. "I didn't realize that you had witnessed that night with such clarity. I've clearly underestimated you, especially if you were able to carry on for so many years with such a heavy heart without my detection. That in itself is worthy of being called my daughter. Yet, how do you plan on killing me with a single piece of cutlery? You haven't condensed your saint weapon yet, nor are you a saint. What means do you have to kill me? You belittle me too much. There's no way I'd believe so naively that I could kill you with a single knife. I smeared some poison on that dagger that I bought for a heavy price at the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. The poison is a dangerous one that will escape even your senses. Yun Tian, you cannot escape death today. May you go to the underworld and be buried with my mother." The woman let out a cold laugh as she spat out her hatred for him. "What? You've poisoned the dagger." The head of the Yun family cried out with terror. Throwing himself at the woman, he roared, "Hand over the antidote at once." She had been prepared for such an action. The moment he had charged at her, she ran for the door and quickly disappeared from sight. He had not given chase and instead stared venomously in the direction she had disappeared. Angrily, he said, "What a terrible brat to conspire to kill your father. You will not escape me." From the middle of his room, he hurriedly took out a bottle filled with pills of antidote. He swallowed the pills to alleviate the poison or at least halt its current progress in his body. After swallowing the antidote pills, the head of the Yun family stalked out of his room. Calling forth for his men, he and the 100 others immediately left the household right away. Chapter 571, The Battle Skill Heirloom of the Bai family. Leaving with haste from the Yun family, the young woman rode her Class 1 magical beast mount at great speeds down the street. Her body was in a weaker state than before since she had been struck by the head of the family. She had received no major injuries, but she was not a saint yet. Her body was not accustomed to taking such a blow, thus, it heavily impacted her condition, causing her face to pale. "I want her captured. You unfilial daughter, who are you to try and kill your own father?" The angry voice of her father exploded from behind. The fabric on his back was completely drenched in blood. He, along with several dozen soldiers, chased after her with great haste. They were unable to fly through the streets since they were congested, so they had trouble catching up to her. The Yun family didn't have many magical beasts to begin with, therefore, many of the soldiers could only rely on their legs to run. Only the head of the Yun family and his most loyal soldiers rode a mount. Both groups blazed down the streets. With both sides racing and crossing over several major streets, they managed to travel several kilometers away from the center of the city. By now, the father had already closed the distance from several hundred meters to just a few dozen. Seeing that her father was gaining on her, the daughter knew that she wouldn't be able to escape if this continued. With a moment's hesitation, she immediately turned into a nearby alleyway. "Wretched girl, don't waste your energy. You cannot escape from me. Hurry up and hand over the antidote." The father roared. His expression was panicked. He could tell the poison within his body was slowly coursing throughout it. The antidotes he had swallowed earlier weren't able to counteract the poison. The only solution left was to find the actual antidote. The woman completely ignored the words her father spat out. Urging her steed to run even faster, she finally came to a stop right in front of an inn. She threw herself down from the mount to run in. She knew that the person she was looking for was in this place. When she ran into the inn, the head of the Yun family and the other soldiers immediately came to a stop by the entrance. "Surround the inn and prevent that unfilial daughter of mine from escaping. You there, follow me in," the man commanded before storming into the inn with his soldiers. At the same time, Jian Chen and his group were gathered together within one of the rooms. Jian Chen, the three major clans of Fengyang City have lost plenty of their experts, but their clans still remain. Do you think we should eradicate their clans entirely? After how they treated you 2 years ago, our strength now would be more than enough to make sure they pay retribution. We shouldn't let them off so easily, especially the Harito clan. Now that we've killed 2 of their Earth Saint Masters, they won't take that matter lying down. Even if they don't do anything now, they will, without a doubt, work against us in the future when the time is right. At the very least, we should cut off the Harito clan and burn the roots so that they will never rise up against us. Ming Dong proposed. Wouldn't that be too cruel? It was only a single person that offended Jian Chen, and he's dead now. Why should we involve their clan? They're innocent in this. Tai Ta blurted out. Giving a thoughtful hum, Jian Chen replied, that much is true. Burning the roots would prevent any future actions against us. The man that slighted me may be dead, but the hatred their clan possesses for me will not be so easily resolved. Since we've killed 2 of their stronger individuals, their hatred will be even deeper. Without a doubt they will bury their feelings and wait for a time to strike when optimal to do the most damage to us. If you think so, then we should take care of the Harito clan straight away after we leave Fengyang City. Ming Dong spoke. There's no need to rush. Our current task at hand is to further develop our strength and wait until the Flame Mercenaries have established a decent scope of control. Soon, even the Harito clan will ask to join the Flame Mercenaries. Jian Chen responded. He was very much aware of the fact that killing 2 individuals would give plenty of trouble for him in the future, so it was best to get rid of the source straight away. Ming Dong hung his head in thought before realizing something. Well then, how about this? Why don't we leave the Harito clan for now and have the Flame Mercenaries take care of them as practice? I have satisfied the grievances I had from my journey to this auction house 2 years ago. We should rest for the night and leave tomorrow morning for the next first-class city to gather some mercenaries. Jian Chen replied. Fine then, we'll return first. The illusionary flash is far too mysterious for me to comprehend in a single go anyways. Now that my level of comprehension has increased, I feel that I have a better chance of understanding it. Ming Dong nodded his head as he stood up from his chair. Jian Chen could only sigh when he heard him mention the illusionary flash. There was regret on his face. This battle skill had been profoundly deep, and was regretfully only usable with Saint Force. He was unable to use this battle skill since he bad no Saint Force. Nothing more could be said about that. I wonder just when I will be able to use the chaotic force, and if I'll be able to use the chaotic force to use the illusionary flash. Jian Chen thought to himself. He knew that it would be a long journey until he was able to use the chaotic force due to the difficulty of cultivating it. His only path as of now was to gather ruler armaments and absorb the energy within them to refine them into chaotic force. However, it would take a tremendous amount of time to accomplish such a task. A single wisp of chaotic force was equivalent to the strength of a saint ruler. Even if he were to refine monster cores into chaotic force, it would take a sea of them for a single strand. Jian Chen, you should rest up as well. We'll be taking our leave. Yu spoke softly to Jian Chen as they all stood up to leave. As soon as Ming Dong opened the door, a bright red blur shot into the room with staggering footsteps before collapsing to the floor. Jian Chen and Ming Dong strangely looked at the sudden arrival that was this red-skirted young woman. At a glance, they recognized her as the young daughter of the Yun family from a week ago. Hey, what on earth are you doing barging into our rooms like that? Ming Dong asked with bemusement. When she stood back up onto her feet, her face was exuberantly pale and her hair had been frazzled from the wind. Such a disheveled figure like the one she had now was completely different than from the graceful figure she had back then. The eyes of the young woman shot straight to Jian Chen with a hard-to-detect hint of panic and apprehension. Hesitating for only a fraction of a moment, she steeled her nerves and said, "My lords, I know that you are all very strong people. I have a matter that I hope that you will be able to help me with. If you help me destroy the Yun family, then I will repay you in kind with an Earth-tier battle skill. Although she looked calm on the outside, her voice had betrayed the nervousness she felt in her heart. Ming Dong observed the young woman with a pondering glance. If I remember correctly, you're the young daughter of the Yun family. How queer, the daughter of the Yun family asking us to eradicate the very same family. Just what type of herb did you mix together and take? You said you have an Earth-tier battle skill. How could we believe such a thing, or did you take us to be 3-year-old children? Growing more anxious, she pressed on, it doesn't matter if you believe me or not. The battle skill I mention is true. As long as you help me destroy the Yun family, I will hand it over to you. So I see, you wretched girl, you've been hiding secrets from me all this time. Suddenly, a furious roar sounded from outside the room as the head of the Yun family and his strong-looking soldiers came into the room. His eyes landed upon Jian Chen and the others. While they all looked young to him, the man knew that they couldn't be taken lightly if his daughter had spoken to them in such a manner. My lords, I am the lord of Fengyang City's Yun family. This girl here has gone mad and tried to kill her own father. Her words cannot be trusted. Whatever Earth-tier battle skill it is something she fabricated and cannot be believed. I'll be taking her back home. If we have bothered you with this scene, I give my utmost apologies. The man politely explained to Jian Chen. It had only taken a moment for him to devise a plan on what to say. Ever since his daughter had spoken, he could already tell that the gathering of people in this room were not people he could afford to offend. With that, the head of the Yun family turned to the soldiers outside the room. What are you loafing around for? Hurry up and escort my daughter back home. Yes. The soldiers responded before moving to grab her. As soon as their feet crossed into the room, Dugu Feng had immediately stepped forward to block them from entering. With an intimidating glare, he asked, out. Who said you could walk into this room as you please? Startled, the head of the Yun family was further convinced that these youths could not be offended at all costs. Yes. We will not enter the room without your express approval. If we may please implore you to allow us to escort my mad daughter home, we will avoid troubling you all any longer. Jian Chen's eyes stared calmly at the young woman. Miss, if you may please leave. Despair immediately overcame the young woman's face. She knew that whether or not she would survive today was completely dependent on Jian Chen's assistance. She knew that returning to the Yun family would mean eternal imprisonment for her now that her battle skill was known. Pleading even harder now, she said, I beg of you to help me. My advanced Earth-tier battle skill is yours in return. The head of the Yun family was ecstatic to hear that it was an advanced Earth-tier battle skill. Quickly schooling his emotions, he said, Crazy girl. My lords, please ignore what my daughter is saying. She doesn't have any battle skills at all, pay no attention to her. He wanted nothing more than to rush up to stuff her mouth to prevent her from talking anymore, but Dugu Feng who was blocking the entryway had intimidated him into inaction. If you had an Earth-tier battle skill, then why didn't you go seek out one of the other powers in Fengyang City to help do your bidding? I would imagine they would all be more than willing to help for an Earth-tier battle skill. Jian Chen inquired. There was never a chance in the past, and I was never sure whether or not an Earth-tier battle skill would be enough to help me. Now that I am at my wit's end, there is no other path to take. I beg of you to believe me. If you can help me, then I will impart my mother's family's battle skill, the miracle water of Bai. This is an invaluable battle skill, I'm sure. The woman desperately pleaded. The antidote was on her person. Hence, if she were to be captured and sent back home, then she would never be able to take revenge for her mother. Not only that, her own body would be endlessly tortured for the battle skill, and she had no doubts that her own father would go through any lengths to obtain it. Upon mention of the battle skill, Jian Chen's face revealed shock. His eyes immediately lit up with a bright glare as he shot straight up from his seat. Astonished, he honed straight on her as he questioned, What did you say? The miracle water of Bai, is that right? This battle skill had immediately brought forth a surge of emotions that he could not quell. It was by no means an unfamiliar battle skill to him. In fact, it was the battle skill that was passed down from each person in the Bai family. Chapter 572, The Identity of Bai Lian. 1. Such a major reaction from Jian Chen caused everyone in the room to jump in surprise, especially the ones that knew Jian Chen most, like Ming Dong, Yu Yu, and Du Gufeng. This was the very first time they had witnessed Jian Chen react in such a way, so they were all flabbergasted at his expression, especially since it was only an Earth-tier battle skill. Jian Chen, what's wrong with this miracle water of Bai? The limpid eyes of Yu Yu observed Jian Chen as she inquired with a soft voice. It was very melodic to hear, like the song of a songbird. Ming Dong and Du Gufeng looked at Jian Chen curiously as well. If a mere Earth-tier battle skill could elicit such a reaction from Jian Chen, then surely there was more to the miracle water of Bai than what they had initially thought. They had not been the only ones that were shocked. Even the young woman herself had been startled by Jian Chen's reaction. Dumbstruck, she could only stand there in ignorance, wondering what she had done wrong. Growing even more nervous, the head of the Yun family glowered at his daughter and boomed, "You crazy girl, don't speak such a tremendous lie. How could you even possibly think that you could lie to such intelligent men like them? Hurry up and come back home with me like a good child." The man was very worried that Jian Chen and the others would seriously believe that she had a battle skill and would interfere. Therefore, he decided to go for broke and charged into the room to grab her. This was his final attempt at trying to take her away to suppress her secret. Du Gufeng did not stop the man from entering this time, allowing him to charge into the room without a problem. He tried to grab at the woman. However, Jian Chen's eyes flashed dangerously as he growled, "Who let you enter this room, scram?" With a wave of his right hand, a wave of energy from the world burst forth and slammed squarely into the man's body. The head of the Yun family was only a primary great saint master, and thus possessed no defenses against Jian Chen's strike. Without even being able to react, his body was thrown back from the tremendous strike and into the wall behind him. He had slammed so hard into the wall that there was a crater from where he smashed through it. A splurt of blood could be seen flying out from his mouth. Jian Chen's control over the energy was exceptionally refined. He had only struck the head of the Yun family himself without any energy splashing over into the yin itself. The tremendous might from the blow had caused the soldiers of the Yun family and even the daughter to be terrified. Everyone could only whip their heads back to Jian Chen with paling faces of terror. As a primary great saint master, someone like the head of the Yun family could only be considered as a mediocre person within Fengyang City. However, even he would be considered as one of the stronger mediocre people. Therefore, when a person like him was sent flying without resistance by a youth no older than 20-something, everyone could only look on in shock. With pointed eyes, Jian Chen stared down the young woman and urged her on, "Do you really have the miracle water of Bai?" She didn't know why Jian Chen was so concerned about the miracle water of Bai, but his strength had frightened her so much that she could only nod in silence. "Ming Dong, hand me a piece of parchment and a brush," he asked Ming Dong. "Right." Without delay, Ming Dong turned around to walk out and retrieve both items Jian Chen had asked for from the innkeeper. Putting both parchment and brush onto a table, Jian Chen told the woman, "Write down all that you know about the miracle water of Bai here." Hearing the non-negotiable order of Jian Chen, the woman hesitated for only a moment before finally responding, "If I write this down, then will you agree to my request? Will you destroy the Yun family and kill the murderer of my mother?" "I promise." This time, Jian Chen hadn't hesitated to answer. Having received Jian Chen's promise, the young woman couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. She knew that this would go against her mother's wishes when she was told to never give it to any outsider, but with the situation as it was, there had been no other choice. Quickly putting the brush to the parchment, the young woman had soon written down a complete battle skill for Jian Chen. Taking the word-filled parchment into his hands, Jian Chen began to look at the inner contents. The longer he read, the more thunderstruck he felt. The miracle water of Bai was not unknown to Jian Chen, since it was the battle skill that was handed down from generation to generation in the Bai family. Once, his uncle Bai Dao and mother Bai Yuntian had wanted to gift him the battle skill as well, but he was no longer capable of using Saint Force as a whole since he had lost his Saint weapon. Furthermore, he knew that this miracle water of Bai was separated into 3 stages. The first was a human tier, the second was an earth tier, and the third was a heaven tier. From what the woman had written down, it fully depicted the first and second stage of the miracle water of Bai. Word for word, it was a perfect match to what Bai Dao and his mother had once told him. This was far too much for Jian Chen to believe. Slowly putting down the piece of paper, Jian Chen looked at the young woman seriously. "Tell me, where did you learn of this miracle water of Bai?" "This was what my mother told me. Is there a problem with it?" She answered with a puzzled expression. "What was the name of your mother?" When Jian Chen asked her, the young woman began to think hard, searching the deepest parts of her mind where memories of her kind and caring mother were kept. She couldn't help but begin to tear up from these nostalgic but painful memories as she sobbed out, "My mother was called Bai Yunhai." As if struck by lightning, Jian Chen's entire body began to shake as the parchment with the battle skill fell from his hands. In disbelief, Jian Chen looked at the young woman in despondence. "Bai Yunhai. Bai Yunhai. Your mother had the surname of Bai." Ming Dong and the others stared in confusion at Jian Chen. They didn't know what had happened to the Bai family, and didn't understand the relationship Jian Chen had with them. Naturally, they wouldn't know why Jian Chen would be so taken aback when he heard that the young woman's mother had the last name of Bai. "Brother, are you okay?" Ming Dong couldn't help but ask in concern. As Jian Chen was his brother, the mood of Jian Chen would influence him as well. Quashing down the surge of emotions that was assaulting his mind, Jian Chen slowly shook his head. "I'm fine." With that, his eyes turned back to fixedly stare at the young woman. In this single moment, the expression in his eyes drastically changed. "What is your name?" Jian Chen asked with a surprisingly warm and kind voice. "My name is Yun Lian," she replied. Her bright eyes stared curiously at Jian Chen as if confused about the look Jian Chen was giving her. She was a clever person and could sense the change in Jian Chen's voice, but it confounded her on why it had happened in the first place. "Your mother has already died, correct?" Jian Chen asked. Upon mention of her mother, Yun Lian's eyes began to well up with tears once more before giving a grieved nod of her head. Sighing, Jian Chen replied, "So your mother never told you about the Bai family?" Yun Lian looked blankly at Jian Chen before shaking her head. She had not a single iota of knowledge relating to the Bai family. "How did your mother die?" Jian Chen asked one word at a time, with each pause growing even more cold than before. A furious glare emerged from Yun Lian's eyes as she tightly clenched her teeth. "My mother was beaten to death by the head of the Yun family. He is a beast in the shape of a man. For the sake of learning the miracle water of Bai from my mother, he tried to beat it out of her. But my mother was unwilling. Her body had already been weak, and after such an inhuman beating, she was unable to endure it any more. She left the world." Yun Lian burst into tears at this point. "My mother's death was far too cruel. I must take revenge for the sake of my mother. Her murderer is no man, but a beast in disguise." Although the head of the Yun family was her father, Yun Lian felt no emotions for him besides hatred. Jian Chen's fist had tightened so much that the knuckles in his hand released a series of crackling sounds in symbolization of his anger. "Dugu Feng, bring the head of the Yun family here right now," Jian Chen growled. Dugu Feng gave a deep stare at Jian Chen before turning around to leave. Quickly bringing back the injured man, he tossed the man unceremoniously onto the ground. The head of the Yun family had been grievously injured after receiving a single strike from Jian Chen. Even now, he found himself without the energy to stand back up. An Earth Saint Master wouldn't be able to take the strike of a Heaven Saint Master, let alone a Great Saint Master. You beast! I'll definitely make sure you'll be buried with my mother. Yun Lian immediately kicked her father's head with hatred. After carefully hiding her emotions for so long, she had finally found an opportunity to take revenge. The violent hate she felt was now spilling out all at once. No one in the room stopped her. They decided to watch from the sidelines. The treatment that her mother had suffered by the hands of this man for a battle skill was more than enough for them all to be filled with anger as well. After a moment, Yun Lian finally grew tired. Falling to the ground, she began to cry, tears streaming down. No one could understand her mind, and no one could understand the torment and pain she felt. On one hand, the head of the Yun family was her father, and on the other hand, it was he that had killed her mother. Confronted with such a cruel choice, it couldn't possibly be a light situation for anyone else to take. Chapter 573, The Identity of Bai Lian. 2. Yun Lian remained sprawled on the ground for some time before she finally cried herself to exhaustion. Her tears ceased, and the only thing left was pain. A sigh escaped from Jian Chen's mouth as he stared at Yun Lian. Turning to Du Gufeng, he said, "Escort the man down, but make sure he doesn't run away." Du Gufeng sensed that there had to be some sort of special connection between Yun Lian and Jian Chen. With the hatred between Yun Lian and the head of the Yun family, he decided not to ask about it for now. He nodded his head in a serious manner. "Very well. I'll look over him carefully." The man was picked up by Du Gufeng like a clump of mud, and carried out of the room. Jian Chen hesitated for a moment as he watched Yun Lian. Finally, he said, "Come with me to the Jessen Kingdom." She had not expected to hear the words that had come out of Jian Chen's mouth. The ones about going to the Jessen Kingdom, and thus, she was shocked as a result. Looking suspiciously at Jian Chen, she asked, "Why should I go with you to the Jessen Kingdom?" "To confirm something. Perhaps you'll find family there." Jian Chen replied. All sorts of emotions were running through his mind at that moment. Who would have thought that a person he met just a few days ago would be a member of the Bai family? "My family?" Yun Lian whispered for a moment before shaking her head in sorrow. "No, I have no family left. The only one I had was my mother, but even she is gone now. My father is no man, but a beast. He isn't my rightful father. I'll make sure to kill him by my own hand to satisfy my mother's revenge." Yun Lian bitterly cried out. Slowly walking to Yun Lian, Jian Chen said once more, "Come with me to the Jessen Kingdom. There is one thing I must confirm. It relates to your mother." "To my mother? What could that be?" Yun Lian's eyes lit up as if her interest had been piqued. "I don't have the words to say it right now. Wait until you come to the Jessen Kingdom, you will understand then." Jian Chen explained in a serious tone. She hesitated. This matter was surprisingly related to her mother, so she couldn't be indifferent to it. After a moment's hesitation, she finally nodded her head in agreement. "Fine, I will go with you to the Jessen Kingdom." "Then, let us go right now." Jian Chen impatiently responded. Turning to Ming Dong and the others, he said, "I will return to the Jessen Kingdom first. Wait for me here until I get back. If anything happens, break this jade stone." With that, Jian Chen handed a piece of jade to Ming Dong. This was an especially precious jade stone on the Tianyuan continent that would cause its sister stone to break apart at the same time when crushed, no matter how far the distance was in between the two. As such, it was considered a surefire method of signaling. The group knew that this situation held more to it than they had thought. It wasn't something they could even imagine, so they decided not to ask for now. Taking the jade stone from Jian Chen, Ming Dong replied to him in serious manner, "Brother, come back quickly." Nodding his head, Jian Chen gave his farewells to everyone before walking back to Yunlien. "Is there anything else you have left to do here? If not, then we'll be on our way." "There's nothing. But we're a long way from the Jessen Kingdom, shouldn't we prepare for our travel?" Yunlien asked. "No need, we'll be there very quickly," Jian Chen answered. Holding on to Yunlien's arm, Jian Chen waved his hand. With a single thought, he enveloped them both with a bubble of wind. Before she could even react, Yunlien and Jian Chen immediately shot from the room into the sky. Like a bright burst of azure light, they ascended into the sky at a lightning-quick speed. So fast that the bystanders in the streets had been unable to make out what it was. The sudden sensation of being shot into the sky had frightened Yunlien so much that she had cried out and turned pale in terror. When she recovered, she could only hear the wind streaming through her ears and blowing her hair everywhere. Under her feet, Fengyang City had been reduced to a very small area. The previously giant city was now completely viewable in its entirety. Even the throngs of people on the streets had been reduced to the size of ants with no distinguishing characteristics between each one. Stunned at the sight of the still rapidly diminishing city, Yunlien was silent for a long while. At that current moment, she was terribly frightened and could not keep her heart in check. It did not take long for Fengyang City to disappear into the horizon underneath the two. The scenery of the rest of the world gradually grew fainter before a plume of clouds started to obscure the ground from sight. Jian Chen had brought Yunlien over a sea of clouds. Nothing else could be seen but the whiteness from the tops of the clouds. After what seemed like a long while, Yunlien finally regained her ability to think coherently. With eyes wide open, she stared in disbelief at the young but handsome face of Jian Chen with one hand over her mouth in shock. Yoyuyura, a heaven saint master. A tidal wave of emotions overcame Yunlien's mind at that point. A heaven saint master was among the strongest on the continent. On the power structure, they were nearly at the top, and would be heads above anyone else if put in any random kingdom. Even a king would have to treat them as majestic and illustrious entities with most haste. Their very existences were the same as being compared to an entire kingdom. The rise or fall of a kingdom was completely dependent on where the Heaven Saint Master was in the equation. Yunlien hadn't thought it was possible that the youth right next to her would actually be a Heaven Saint Master. In the eyes of a commoner, men like these were godlike. The Yun family was a small household, but as their treasured daughter, Yunlien was gifted in her intelligence. She herself knew clearly what a Heaven Saint Master meant. As long as there was a Heaven Saint Master in place, then even a nobody clan would leap several rungs on that ladder to become one of the strongest powers in any kingdom. With a hand covering her wide-open mouth, she continued to stare at Jian Chen in mute silence. A Heaven Saint Master was indeed too much for her to take in at once. Seeing shocked expression on Yunlien's face, Jian Chen couldn't help but reveal a small smile. He didn't bother to explain anything. He just continued to hurry on his way as if impatient to quickly arrive back at the Changyang clan to prove Yunlien's identity. It took 6 hours before Jian Chen finally arrived at the Jessen Kingdom. Without even stopping, he rushed on toward Lore City. After a single hour, the two of them finally arrived outside of Lore City. From far away, plenty of tents could be seen set up away from the city walls. Above each tent was a banner with the Qin symbol emblazoned on it. After such a long travel time, Yunlien had already regained some semblance of tranquility. Seeing the barracks over there, she asked out of curiosity, "Is that the army from the Qinhuang Kingdom?" "Correct. There is about 500,000 soldiers from the Qinhuang Kingdom. With the name of the Eastern Deity Swords, they are one of the strongest armies of the Qinhuang Kingdom," Jian Chen explained. "Then this city must be Lore City. The rumors are true then. The Qinhuang Kingdom and the Changyang clan have a connection between the two if the army is stationed here." Yun Lian muttered with admiration. The Qinhuang kingdom was one of the 8 great powers on the continent, and with their support, the name of the Jessan kingdom had been established as the dominant power over this area with no other equal. Continuing to fly into the city like a bright bullet made of azure light, the two of them entered Lore City before Yun Lian could even properly study it. In seconds, they finally touched down in front of a giant compound, the Changyang Manor. "Follow me in." Jian Chen released Yun Lian's shoulder, and called out for her to follow him into the grounds. Surveying the compound, Yun Lian's eyes subconsciously hovered over the giant signboard on top of the gates where the 3 words, Changyang Manor, had been carved out in fancy calligraphy. At this sight, Yun Lian immediately turned pale. Although she had lived her entire life in Fengyang City, she was aware of the events that had occurred in the Jessan kingdom. The matters relating to the Changyang clan were especially clear to her. The Changyang clan was once a rather low-profile clan within the Jessan kingdom. After the war between the 4 kingdoms and the Jessan kingdom, the might of the Changyang clan was brought forth for the whole world to see. Hence, they became well known as a result. Even after that, when the 10 Heaven Saint Masters from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom attacked, they were forced back by the clan and had lost several of their members as a result. Such a battle had further increased the Changyang clan's name. They deserved to be recognized as the strongest in the Jessan kingdom. Completely replacing the Huayun sect as the strongest power, not even the royal family could stop them. The extremely high status that the Changyang clan had obtained couldn't even be compared to the Yun family, who was insignificant in Fengyang City. They were ants in comparison to the 3 major clans in that city, but similarly, those 3 clans would be insects in comparison to the Changyang clan, who was already heads above the royal family in might. Yun Lian had never expected to see herself stand outside the gates to the Changyang clan. This was a clan that she regarded favorably. Hurriedly pulling at Jian Chen's robes, she said with worry, "This is the Changyang clan. Why did you bring me here? Are you sure we didn't fly to the wrong place?" Smiling, Jian Chen replied, "Don't worry, there's no problems here. Follow me." With that, Jian Chen pulled Yun Lian through the doors. Upon Jian Chen's entrance, the 2 soldiers guarding the entryway had snapped to salute with the utmost amount of respect they could muster. As Jian Chen grew closer, the 2 of them bowed down at the same time. "We pay our respects to the 4th master." The loud shouts of the 2 frightened the timid Yun Lian, who was right beside Jian Chen. Suddenly, her mind registered what had been said, which caused her to snap her head back to Jian Chen. "4th master? Are you the famous 4th master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Xiangtian?" Chapter 574, The Identity of Bai Lian, 3. Yun Lian stared at Jian Chen with wide-open eyes of shock. Changyang Xiangtian, the 4th master of the Changyang clan, was a name that practically everybody in this region had heard about. He was an idol that practically every youth worshipped and strived to be. Not only was he a Heaven Saint Master, he was also the imperial protector of the Jessan kingdom. Each title he owned was more than enough for everyone to see him as an entity worthy of respect. These 2 titles were as good as halos that enveloped his entire person. Therefore, every youth recognized him as a god that overlooked the country from his domain, and nobody could encroach upon that domain. Jian Chen smiled when he saw the astonished look on Yun Lian's face. "Come inside then." He spoke as he led the still surprised Yun Lian inside the manor. "So you were the 4th master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Xiangtian. I should have realized that. Aside from the 4th master of the clan, who else could possibly be a Heaven Saint Master at such an age?" Yun Lian muttered as she looked at Jian Chen with eyes of adoration. The newly established Changyang Manor's architecture was beautiful. If the old building was night, then the new building was day. Even the interior had become far more imposing. No matter where one looked, a squadron of guards could be seen walking about as they patrolled the grounds with diligence. The pride of even the soldiers could not be contained on their faces. To them, being the guards of the Changyang clan was an unbelievable honor that even their ancestors would be proud of. It also went without saying that the fourth master of the Changyang clan would be the person they respected the most. All Jian Chen had to do was walk on over and every guard would immediately bow their backs with the utmost respect. Walking through the compound, Yun Lian continued to turn her head at every corner to inspect the scenery with great curiosity. All sorts of emotions ran through her mind in violent waves. The Changyang clan was a clan that was too high for her to reach even if it was just her eyes that touched it. She never expected to be able to personally visit their compound. There were no further obstructions for either of the two as they walked to the room of Jian Chen's mother, Bai Yuntian. Quickly, Jian Chen walked to her door. The guards and maids stationed there bowed down in a hurry. We pay our respects to the fourth master. Is my mother inside? Jian Chen asked the two maids. My lady is currently inside resting, fourth master. One of the maids respectfully answered. After the maid had spoken, the doors suddenly opened to reveal the white-robed Bai Yuntian. When she saw Jian Chen, her eyes lit up with excitement. Xianger, when did you come back? Why did you not send a message to your mother earlier? There was a kind and loving tone to her voice. She truly loved this child of hers, and she was so proud of him, especially with his many accomplishments. Curiously, Bai Yuntian looked at the graceful Bai Yuntian. Is this Changyang Xiangtian's mother? Strange, why does she look similar to my mother? Jian Chen felt warm from the loving eyes his mother used on him. He smiled in return. Mother, I actually came back for a rather important matter. Let us go inside your room first. Leading Yun Lian into the room, Jian Chen and Bai Yuntian walked over to the table meant for receiving guests, and sat down there. As soon as the three sat down, Bai Yuntian couldn't help but ask, Xianger, who might this young lady be? Even as she was speaking, Bai Yuntian was already pouring a cup of tea for the two to drink with a benevolent and motherly hand. There was a rather uncomfortable look in Jian Chen's eyes as he looked at Yun Lian. Mother, she is called Yun Lian, a citizen from the Blue Wind Kingdom, but her mother is someone I believe you might recognize. Oh? Whom might that be? I have always lived within the Changyang manor since my marriage. There aren't many that I know. Bai Yuntian gently laughed. Jian Chen hesitated for a brief moment before attentively looking back to his mother. Mother, do you happen to know a person named Bai Yunhai? Clatter. As soon as that name was mentioned, the teapot in Bai Yuntian's hand fell to the table. It spilled the tea water inside all over the table. Not even taking notice of the fact that her clothes were slowly getting wet from the tea water, Bai Yuntian stared at Jian Chen with piercing eyes. She questioned with a quavering voice, what did you say? Xianger, have you seen my younger sister Yunhai? Is she still alive? Where is she? Bai Yuntian's voice grew more and more frantic. Seeing such a large reaction from her, Jian Chen was able to confirm the guess in his mind. Yun Lian's mother was indeed a member of the Bai family. It would also appear that the relationship between her and his mother was extremely close. Yun Lian clearly heard each and every word from Bai Yuntian, but the meaning behind her words knocked her for a loop. From the very start, she couldn't possibly guess just what sort of relationship there was between her mother and the Changyang clan. A mental sigh escaped from Jian Chen. He knew that Bai Yuntian would feel anguished when she learned that Bai Yunhai had already passed on. Mother, Yun Lian is Bai Yunhai's daughter. She is also in possession of our Bai family's miracle water of Bai. Jian Chen explained in serious tone. Bai Yuntian's eyes honed in on Yun Lian as if to study the details of her face. Slowly walking up to her, Bai Yuntian tenderly took hold of Yun Lian's hands. She softly said, so you were the daughter of my younger sister. Yes. Yes, you look quite similar to her when she was young. Lianer, tell your aunt quickly. Where is your mother? Has she been well? The words, aunt, felt very foreign to Yun Lian, and her mind went blank as a result. The fourth lady of the Changyang clan and the mother of Changyen Xiangtian was her aunt? This sudden development had caused her to stiffen up into silence, unable to speak. Bai Yuntian looked at Yun Lian with a gentle and warm light as if she was regaling her like she was her own daughter. Lianer, tell your auntie. Where is your mother? Is she doing well? She asked once more, tears springing forth from her eyes. As soon as she heard mention of her mother, Yun Lian couldn't stop the stinging tears of pain from welling up in her eyes. As they streamed down her cheeks, she let out a whimper, my mother has already passed on. The expression on Bai Yuntian's face immediately froze in disbelief. Momentarily losing her voice, she stuttered, what? Yunhai has, she, Bai Yuntian's feet gave way to her body, causing her to stagger and fall. Mother, careful. Jian Chen cried out in alarm before quickly moving to his mother's side. Gingerly supporting Bai Yuntian back to her stool, he looked on in concern at his mother's pained face. He tried to console her, mother, please don't feel too hurt, this matter happened a long time ago. Tears of grief sprang from her eyes like a fountain. Bai Yuntian's previous elation had instantaneously turned into anguish as she sobbed. Lianer, tell your auntie. How did your mother die? Yun Lian recalled the whole story for Bai Yuntian to hear. When she heard how Bai Yunhai had been beaten to death by the head of the Yun family for the battle skill, Bai Yuntian became even more grieved. She couldn't help but bitterly cry. Yunhai, my sister. Your death was a wretched one. Blame your useless older sister. If I had known earlier, then you wouldn't have had to suffer such misery. Bai Yuntian wailed in anguish. Auntie, did you know my mother? Yun Lian managed to ask a question through her tears. Lianer, your mother was my favorite sister. We were from the same Bai family, and that means your grandfather and my father were one and the same. But ever since the calamity that befell our Bai family, many of our relatives have been killed off. Even your grandfather was killed. All that was left was my elder brother and I. The two of us had thought that we were the only ones left. Never did I imagine that Yunhai managed to escape as well. It is to my regret that I learned about this too late, otherwise I would never have let Yunhai suffer so much. Bai Yuntian could only feel regret when she thought about how Yun Lian's mother had been beaten to death. She couldn't possibly imagine just how much her younger sister had suffered under the hands of someone so inhumane. Sister Yunhai has suffered for far too long. I will make sure that her vengeance will be served by killing that beast of a man. Bai Yuntian's eyes radiated a furious light as she angrily spoke, then does that mean you're, really my aunt? Yun Lian's teary eyes looked to Bai Yuntian. Bai Yuntian nodded her head. Lianer, I am your aunt, and Changyang Xiangtian is your older cousin. Yun Lian's entire person froze up at that declaration as she registered Bai Yuntian's words. For a small moment, she couldn't believe her ears. The fourth lady of the Changyang clan was her aunt, and the imperial protector of the Jessen kingdom and the fourth master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Xiangtian, was her older cousin. This situation was totally unbelievable in the mind of Yun Lian. She had completely worshipped geniuses like Changyang Xiangtian, and now that figure was her cousin. Even Jian Chen felt rather stunned from where he was. Looking blankly at Yun Lian, he found it hard to remain calm. Not once did he ever imagine that the young miss of the Yun family back in Fengyang City would be his younger cousin. Chapter 575, A New Family Member. The sudden introduction of a younger cousin made Jian Chen feel quite complex. He wasn't sure if he was happy or worried. Yet, Jian Chen felt like rejoicing over his decision to not drive out Yun Lian from his room in the inn. If he had, then Yun Lian would have definitely suffered at the hands of her father, who would have done all that he could to extract the battle skill from her. If he was willing to treat his wife that way, he would treat his daughter in a similar fashion. The Yun family was a small one after all, and an Earth-tier battle skill was far too important. Yun Lian's mother had most likely wanted no pressure to befall her daughter, so she had never told her a single thing about the Bai family. Until Yun Lian had met Jian Chen, she had never known the true identity of her mother. The demise of Bai Yunhai had given Bai Yuntian a tremendous amount of grief, but the fact that her daughter was still alive gave her some solace. Her treatment of Yun Lian would be the same as if she was taking care of her own son. Although Yun Lian was not her own flesh and blood, Bai Yuntian would treat her as if she was with all the love and care she possessed. Afterward, Bai Yuntian slowly started to explain the history of the Bai family to Yun Lian so that she could understand why her mother had never told her anything about her past. What Yun Lian couldn't believe was that her deceased mother was once the direct descendant of a powerful family. The three of them remained within the room for more than 2 hours, giving them all plenty of time to recover from any residual grief. Xiang'er, treat her as you would your sister. With your power, you must ensure that you protect her. Don't let your cousin suffer any more. She has already suffered enough. Bai Yuntian made a request to Jian Chen. Jian Chen nodded with a serious but honest expression as he pledged, "Mother, don't you worry. I will definitely protect Yun Lian. I won't let her feel any more grievances." Yun Lian's mind was sent into a flux once more when she heard Jian Chen's words. She felt as if she was in a dream that was far too mystical to even be a dream. In the span of 4 hours, her identity had experienced a tremendous transformation. This to her was something that she had a hard time stomaching. The imperial protector of the Jessen kingdom, Changyang Xiangtian, was the person she had regarded the most. However, he was a figure she could only look at and not touch. Now, he was suddenly her older cousin, and he had even pledged to protect her from any harm or sorrow. Yun Lian really felt as if she had suddenly been transported into a dream world. Softly pulling at Yun Lian's hand, Bai Yuntian said, "Lianer, your father treated your mother and you inhumanely. Forsake your last name of Yun and return to your roots as a member of Bai. Starting from today, you should take on the surname of Bai. Call yourself Bai Lian. You will be a member of the Changyang clan, and will have nothing more to do with the Yun family." Hesitating for the longest time, Yun Lian finally nodded her head before replying meekly, "Auntie, I understand. But wouldn't the other members of the Changyang clan see me as an outsider?" There was concern on her face. A faint smile appeared on Bai Yuntian's face. Good, you will now go by the name Bai Lian. Lianer, you needn't worry about a thing. With your cousin, no one will dare bully you. You don't even need to worry about the other members from the Changyang clan. From the outside, it would seem that the power of the clan resides within the master of the household or the abdicated elders. In reality, it is your cousin that holds all of the power. Not a single person would dare ignore his words. Even the king of the Jessen kingdom is no exception. Once more, Bai Lian felt shocked at Bai Yuntian's words before turning to Jian Chen. She knew that Jian Chen held supreme status within the Jessen kingdom, but she didn't think that his status would be the same within the clan itself, especially if he reigned over the family head and the elders. Pulling Bai Lian up, Bai Yuntian said, "Lianer, it's getting late. Why don't we go eat a meal? I can introduce you to my husband and Chang Bai. Given some time, your auntie will take you to the imperial palace to see your uncle. Your uncle works as the captain commander of the imperial palace, so unless there is something important, he won't come to visit." Hearing that her uncle was the captain commander of the Jessen kingdom, Bai Lian could really cement the fact that in a short few hours, her status had made a world-turning change. Being the golden daughter to the Yun family couldn't even compare. Yet, this change had been too sudden. She found it hard to react. If my mother had known that auntie was alive and well, then perhaps she wouldn't have died. Bai Lian thought to herself. Afterward, Jian Chen and his mother led Bai Lian to the dining halls for a meal. At the table, Bai Lian came across the family head and his other wives. Bai Yuntian revealed Bai Lian's identity to them, but she had not go in depth with the matters relating to the Bai family. She only revealed that Bai Lian was the daughter of her long-lost sister. Everyone was receptive to Bai Lian without a single objection. Everything was all due to the outstanding son of Bai Yuntian after all. The meal was exuberantly cheerful, and Changyang Ba, Ling Long, and Yu Fengyan treated Bai Lian very amiably. The only one that acted unnaturally was third aunt Bai Yushuang. The third aunt was someone that Jian Chen didn't even feel like greeting nowadays. Since his childhood, she had always objected to him and fought him over everything. When he had just returned to the Changyang clan, the third aunt had exploded to the point of being unable to stand him. If not for the fact that she was his aunt, Jian Chen wouldn't have forgiven her. After the meal, Bai Yuntian led Bai Lian to her very own room while Jian Chen walked by himself to his own building in the compound to rest. Night quickly gave way to day. In the morning, Jian Chen said his farewells to Changyang Ba before taking Bai Yuntian and Bai Lian into the air. They headed away from the manor toward the Blue Wind Kingdom. Bai Yuntian harbored a very deep hatred for the one that had killed her younger sister. Without listening to anyone, she wanted Jian Chen to bring her to the Blue Wind Kingdom, so she take revenge. Unable to compromise, Jian Chen could only look helplessly from the side before agreeing to take her to the Blue Wind Kingdom. After several hours of flight, Jian Chen returned to the same inn in Fengyang City. At that moment, Ming Dong, Yu Yu, Tai Ta, and Dugu Feng were all stepping out from the inn. When they saw that Jian Chen had quickly returned, they were excited to see him. When their eyes landed on Bai Yuntian beside him, they looked at her in bewilderment. "Ah, mother-in-law, what brings you here?" Yu Yu asked the white-robed but graceful Bai Yuntian a question from her surprise. Bai Yuntian smiled and exchanged several words of greeting to Yu Yu before turning back to Jian Chen. With impatience, she said, "Xianger, where is the murderer of my younger sister?" Turning to Dugu Feng, Jian Chen commanded, "Bring out the head of the Yun family." Soon enough, the thin and sallow figure of the head of the Yun family was brought out by Dugu Feng. When she saw the killer of her sister, Bai Yuntian was unable to maintain her composure. Thus, she immediately started to kick at the man with fury. "You immoral beast! Sister Yunhai was undoubtedly a treasure to behold by you, yet you failed to cherish the treasure that was my sister. Even worse, you beat her to death. I will make you pay for that crime with your life." Bai Yuntian wailed in anguish as she furiously beat the man. When she thought back to her closest younger sister Shi and how she had been killed by this man, she could only feel anguish. Bai Yuntian's actions caused Ming Dong, Yu Yu, Dugu Feng, and Tai Ta to look on with wide eyes and open mouths. Absolutely bewildered, they could only stare at her and then at each other, but not a single one of them knew what to do or say. The still mourning Yun Lian was unable to stop herself as well. With both feet, she continued to kick at the head of her father while crying incessantly. "Stop! Lianer, I am your father. I may have done wrong with your mother, but you cannot treat me this way. I am your father, your family. Your father has done wrong, your father wishes to apologize. Please forgive your father. If you don't give your father the antidote, your father will die from this poison." He cried out with his head on the ground. With his body extremely battered and the poison having already taken root, he had lost the most basic of motor functions in his body. The only way he would survive now would be if his daughter gave him the antidote. "You aren't fit to be my father. I don't have a father that is as cruel as you. From here on out, I forsake the last name of Yun and will take on the surname Bai." Bai Lian howled with tears. After beating the man soundly for a moment, the two women finally stopped to catch their breaths. "Lianer, take your auntie to see your mother's grave," Bai Yuntian commanded. Nodding, Bai Lian took the group away from the inn while Dugu Feng was once more put in charge of guarding the head of the Yun family. Quickly, the group arrived within a small grotto outside Fengyang City. The tomb of Bai Yunhai was rather simple, with a small mound and a tombstone that was about half the height of a person. The words on the tombstone had been inscribed with, "The grave of Bai Yunhai." Seeing the simple and crude tombstone of Bai Yunhai, Bai Yuntian's eyes couldn't help but begin to flow with tears once more. Slowly kneeling down by the grave, she gingerly touched the dusty tombstone as if it was the face of her sister and not cold hard stone. Chapter 576. Carrying the coffin into the city, Bai Yuntian knelt down by Bai Yunhai's grave and tenderly touched the ice-cold gravestone. Droplets of tears flowed from her eyes as she revealed a sorrowful expression. In her mind, she couldn't help but think back 20 years ago when she was with her younger sister Bai Yunhai. Every day with her had been a day of joy and happiness. They were practically inseparable. They would play with one another, eat with one another, and never were they ever apart. "Sister Yunhai, everything was your sister's fault. I was unable to do anything. If I had known that you had escaped as well, I would never have allowed you to fall to such a state. Sister Yunhai, you suffered plenty those years. Even in your death your grave is a simple one. Blame your older sister for being inconsiderable." Bai Yuntian wailed in grief. "Mother, your daughter will soon take revenge for you. Your daughter will personally kill the beast that claimed your life. Please, mother, rest in peace." Bai Lian knelt beside the grave and wailed alongside Bai Yuntian. Seeing the pained look on their faces, Jian Chen felt a wave of grief in him well up from where he stood to the side, but he did not speak. Right by his side, Ming Dong, Yu Yu, and Tai Ta were all flabbergasted by the strange sight in front of them. Not a single one of them knew what was happening, nor did they understand the sudden relationship between Bai Lian's mother and Bai Yuntian. Unable to hold her silence after a short while, Yu Yu finally whispered to Jian Chen, "What is going on here? How did this situation happen?" Sighing, Jian Chen explained, "Yunlian's mother and my mother were sisters. She no longer goes by the name Yunlian. Now she goes by Bai Lian. By rights, she is my cousin." Ming Dong and Yu Yu's mouth dropped wide open at this piece of information from the shock they received. "What? The young daughter of the Yun family is your younger cousin?" Yu Yu exclaimed in shock. "That's utterly unbelievable." Ming Dong cried out as well before looking back to Bai Lian, who was crying by the grave. He never imagined that the golden daughter that had barged into their room 2 days ago would actually be Jian Chen's cousin. Jian Chen watched his mother cry in grief for a small moment longer before finally walking up to console her. "Mother, please don't feel sad. The dead cannot come back to life, and Auntie Yunhai passed away years ago." Wiping her tears away, Bai Yuntian gave a small sob. "Sister Yunhai, you must have felt alone resting in this place by yourself for so many years. Worry not, my sister. Now that I have finally found you, there is no way I won't bring you back to Changyang Manor. I will be with you daily. You won't be lonely anymore." Moving to the back of the gravestone, Bai Yuntian gently hugged the stone, and let her tears drop onto the tough earth below. After years and years of weathering the wind, rain, and harsh sunlight, the soil had grown dry and rigid. After several attempts to dig out the soil with her tender fingers, Bai Yuntian's fingers had chafed up and started to bleed. However, she did not seem to notice nor care. The pain that she felt in her fingers was incomparable to the pain she felt in her heart, so with all of her energy, she dug at the gravestone. With thoughts of bringing the grave of her sister away from here. Such a sight hurt Jian Chen tremendously. Hurriedly grabbing hold of his mother's arm, he pleaded with her, "Mother, don't be like this, stop. Let your son do this, please rest for now." Bai Yuntian shook her head, "No. I must save my sister myself. I will take my sister Yunhai back to Changyang Manor with my own 2 hands." Digging with all her might, her previously jade-like fingers were covered with both dirt and blood. The ground had become stained with her blood. "Mother, please let your son help you. If he could not stop her, then Jian Chen would have to follow his mother's plan and take part himself. Moving to dig out the grave half as tall as he was, Jian Chen tried his best to alleviate his mother's pains as much as possible. Bai Lian quickly joined the two of them next to the grave. Together, the three dug at the grave with only their hands. "Mother, your daughter has done you wrong by letting you rest alone in this desolate wasteland for so many years. Mom, you'll have a new home and family soon. Your daughter will follow you there. You won't be alone anymore. Allow me to help you, Auntie." Yu was moved by such a display. Holding back her tears, she knelt in front of the grave and began to use her tender, white hands to dig at the dirt. Ming Dong displayed a complicated look on his face as he watched. Without a word, he followed Yu's example to kneel by the grave, and used his own fingers to dig into the dirt to excavate the tomb underneath. In the end, even Tai Ta joined their attempt. Under the orderly movements of everyone, the grave was quickly excavated. Just 2 meters beneath the earth was a single dark coffin. "Mother!" Seeing this coffin, Bai Lian's sorrows and pains exploded all at once in the form of a single pain-filled howl. If not for Jian Chen stopping her, she would have most likely jumped down to hold the coffin. Jian Chen's heart was full of sorrow at the sight of this muddy coffin. Letting out a mental sigh to himself, he slowly levitated the coffin out of the ground by using the energy of the world. He carefully set it down on the open ground. Nearing the coffin, Bai Yuntian's bloody hands gently wiped off the dirt on the coffin as if she was carefully polishing a priceless jewel. "Sister Yunhai, 20 years have passed by so fast. Do you still recognize me?" "It's me, your older sister Yuntian." Bai Yuntian muttered. "Yunhai, come home with your sister. I'll be by your side daily. You won't be lonely anymore, okay?" Bai Lian half collapsed onto the coffin with tears flowing from her eyes in an endless stream. So heavy were her tears that her eyes had already grown red from crying too much. "Mother, Bai Lian, we should hurry the coffin back to the city. After spending so many years buried in this wasteland, I am sure Auntie is fed up with this place." Jian Chen consoled them. This time, there was no opposition from Bai Yuntian and Bai Lian. They both agreed with Jian Chen's suggestion. Under Jian Chen's actions, he carried the coffin and left the area. Holding the coffin, Jian Chen re-entered Fengyang City under the eyes of countless of bystanders. They stared at him in complete flummox at this queer sight. "Do you think that guy has an illness or something? Look at all that dirt, I bet he just dug it from the ground. Is he planning on entering the city with that? Doesn't he know that it's forbidden to do that? He doesn't know the rules at all, I bet. Let's watch and see if the guards stop him." Countless of soldiers and mercenaries pointed and jeered in Jian Chen's direction as they ridiculed him. With the coffin on his shoulder, Jian Chen quickly strode forward to enter the city. One of the soldiers immediately came up to stop Jian Chen. Seeing that Jian Chen was carrying a coffin, the soldier took him to be a vagabond that couldn't possibly have any money, and decided that there would be no need to be civil with him. With a high and mighty voice, he said, "Stop right there. Our Fengyang city has disallowed any coffin from entering the city. If you wish to enter the city, get lost." Before he could even finish speaking, Jian Chen had already let out a loud command before kicking the soldier square in the chest to send the soldier flying. "There's a troublemaker. Arrest him." As if a nest of a hornet had been poked, a multitude of soldiers came flying out with their weapons raised. On top of the city walls, several soldiers had prepared their crossbows to fire at Jian Chen. Jian Chen's mood had been soured by today's events, and with the annoying buzz of the soldiers, he felt his killing intent rise. With so many soldiers charging at him, Jian Chen's eyes let out an icy glare before his killing intent billowed out from his body, dropping the surrounding temperature down several degrees. Anyone close to him immediately felt as if they had been plunged into icy cold water, stopping them dead in their tracks. On the city walls, the captain of the city guards muttered to himself, "Dearie me. With the heads of the three major clans dead, our Fengyang city has lost a terrible amount of military might. Our city lord is the only Earth Saint Master left as a result from those obscenely strong youngsters back at the auction house. In age, they are younger than me, but in power, they are incomparably stronger than me. One of them is even a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. They will become a Heaven Saint Master any day now. How inconceivable. How very inconceivable. I wonder which family they belong to." The commander's eyes reflected an envious look. At the same time, the killing intent coming from Jian Chen had immediately shaken the commander from his thoughts. Sensing the tremendous amount of killing intent, the commander turned pale with fright. Bolting up from his chair, he cried out, "What killing intent? Where is that coming from?" Before he had even finished his sentence, the commander was already running out from the building he was in. When the commander saw the soldiers surrounding Jian Chen down below, his eyes immediately dilated and his face drained of any remaining color. In a frantic hurry, he cried out, "Stay your hand. Every soldier, stand down at once." As he cried out, the commander thought back to the sight he had witnessed back at the Heavenly Phoenix auction house. It had been deeply ingrained in his mind that this new group of people were not people they could offend at any costs. Chapter 577, An Impressive Burial. 1. There had been no need for the commander to command them to stop, for the soldiers around Jian Chen were already at a complete stop. With terrified eyes, they observed the murderous aura radiating from Jian Chen in fear. Thoroughly intimidated by Jian Chen, not a single soldier dared to act as aggressive as before. The commander feared that the soldiers had angered Jian Chen and that he would slaughter them all in anger, so the commander didn't delay for even a moment. He leaped off the wall to run to Jian Chen. When he saw the dark and foreboding expression on Jian Chen's face, the commander's face grew nervous and his body started to shake. This youngster in front of him was the very person that feared not even the Harito clan. A power like that was far beyond what Fengyang City could even think of annoying. "My lord, please quell your anger. This was a mistake born from my careless discipline. Your humble servant will properly penalize these bastards who have done you wrong. This one hopes that you will turn the other cheek and forego what has happened just now and let bygones be bygones." The commander hurriedly asked Jian Chen for forgiveness with an enchanting smile and a respectful salute. He was afraid that this small offense would cause another calamity to befall Fengyang City. The commander carefully observed Jian Chen's face before he hurriedly turned around to look at the soldiers around them. He would definitely not be as respectful to these soldiers as he was to Jian Chen. His face darkened as he let a voice filled with a superior boom from his mouth, "You sightless bastards! How dare you act so rudely against the Lord here? Are you tired of living? Who was the idiot to stand up against this Lord here? Stand front and center to beg for forgiveness at once." There was a slight shuffle of hesitation within the soldiers before finally a pale-faced soldier came stumbling out from behind the group. There was a clear footprint on his chest, marking him as the soldier Jian Chen had first kicked. Striding over to the soldier, he slammed his foot into the butt of the soldier and began to scold him, "Hurry up and beg forgiveness from the Lord." The commander had kicked him so hard that the soldier fell flat onto the ground next to Jian Chen's feet. There was no anger in the soldier's face at all, only complete and utter fear. He was fully aware of the fact that he had angered the worst person possible. "My lord, this lowly soldier has done wrong. This lowly soldier with no eyes has erred and wasted the precious time of my lord. My lord, please be generous and spare the life of your subordinate." The soldier lamented pitifully right in front of Jian Chen. Right now in the man's mind, his regret had been so huge that his intestines had gone green. With a heavy and dark expression, Jian Chen's eyes frostily glared at the soldier in front of him. The series of events that had happened today had already caused his heart to feel down, causing his temperament to be crabbier. When the soldier had stopped him from carrying the coffin of his aunt Yunhai into the city, Jian Chen had truly been ready to kill. If not for the timely apology from the commander, there would have most likely been a bloodbath in front of the city gates. By this time, Yu had moved to Jian Chen's side and held his left arm. "Jian Chen, let it go. There's no need to waste time on such small matters." As a result of Yu's words, the murderous aura around Jian Chen's body slowly ebbed away. Still staring icily at the soldier kneeling in front of him, he yelled, "Scram!" Seeing that the situation had stabilized, the commander was able to let out the long breath of air he was holding mentally. Grabbing the clothes of the soldier and tossing him to the side, he cried out in anger, "Hurry up and move out of the way. Don't block the Lord's path." A smile then greeted his face as he spoke to Jian Chen with a cordial tone, "My lord, if you would, please enter the city. This one won't hold up any more of your precious time. Please, have a nice trip." Despite Fengyang City decreeing that carrying unlucky items such as coffins were forbidden, Jian Chen's entrance brokered no attempt from the commander to stop him. On the contrary, the commander had welcomed him in with the utmost respect as if he was afraid of offending him. Without another word, Jian Chen heaved the coffin with Bai Yunhai into the city. With a heavy expression behind him, Bai Yuntian, Yu, Ming Dong, Tai Ta, and Bai Lian followed. After they entered the city, the area near the city gates finally resumed its normal schedule. There had been plenty of people who had stopped as a result of the exchange, but not a single one of them spoke after the series of events that had transpired. Everyone could only stare at the retreating figures of Jian Chen and his group in silent awe. In the eyes of the merchants and mercenaries, the city guards were not to be trifled with. Although these soldiers weren't stronger than the mercenaries, they were still representing the Blue Wind Kingdom's government as a military. In the case that there was conflict, the entire Blue Wind Kingdom would post a warrant or bounty for the one responsible if one did not have the proper backing. The people who first saw the youngster carry the coffin toward the gates witnessed the youth kicking and injuring one of the guards, and also watched the very same youth be bowed down to and waited on like a dog by the commander of the city guards for forgiveness. Everyone could only try to guess what powerful status the youth held for the commander to fear him so much. With the still dirty coffin held high on his shoulders, Jian Chen strode down the streets of the city, causing everyone to glance over at him. Whomever Jian Chen had passed, they would stop and turn to look at him with a bizarre expression. Entering the city with a coffin in hand was an extremely rare sight to be seen in Fengyang City. Unlucky items like coffins were forbidden within the city. They could only be left outside. However, plenty of them recognized Jian Chen as the one responsible for killing 5 Earth Saint Masters at the Heavenly Phoenix auction house several days ago. It was with great fright that the look in their eyes turned fearful. Soon enough, Jian Chen had brought the coffin back to the inn. Upon entering the inn, he had frightened one of the waiters who wailed straight away, "Customer, how could you bring a coffin into this establishment? Our city has forbidden the possession of one, please put it away, or you'll scare away the other customers." The innkeeper came rushing out when he heard the commotion. When he saw the coffin, he said with an embarrassed expression, "Dear customer, if you could please find somewhere else to put the coffin. We cannot have such an item in our inn, otherwise, how will our other customers dare rest here?" Striding forward, Ming Dong placed several purple coins into the innkeeper's palm, "Then we'll rent out the entire inn. If they're willing to stay here, then let them. If they don't, then they can get lost. Spare the words and get out of our way." The stack of purple coins that Ming Dong gave the innkeeper was more than enough to pay for the expenses of the inn for several months. Seeing such a tremendous sum placed into his hand, the innkeeper's previously anxious eyebrows loosened and rose up in delight. Hurriedly putting away the coins, he replied, "Yes, well spoken. A coffin is only but a small matter, nothing worth worrying about at all. Dear guests, if you would please, come in." When Jian Chen and the others disappeared up the stairwell, the innkeeper clasped the purple coins with both hands in utmost delight. How generous those lords are. These purple coins are far more than enough for this inn to operate for months. A windfall this was definitely a profit for us. Some of the mercenaries who had been eating off by the side chose that time to speak up. Innkeeper, the word fear doesn't exist in your dictionary, does it? Do you even know who those people who gave you money are? Of course I know. They have to be the young lords of some well-off family. Where else would they have so much money? The innkeeper laughed in response. Here, let me tell you. Those youngsters were the ones that killed the Earth Saint Masters of the 3 clans to this city. Even the 2 Earth Saint Masters from the Harito clan were killed off by them, the mercenary explained. Straight away, the innkeeper's face had drained of its color. What? They're the ones that killed the 3 heads? The same mercenary nodded in confirmation. Correct. The youth that gave you that stack of coins was an Earth Saint Master who is only a step away from becoming a Heaven Saint Master. The shopkeeper's knees buckled from the realization. Falling to the floor in apparent weakness, he muttered despondently, "Dear heavens, I took their money and even had the gall to tell them to put their items elsewhere. I must be tired of living." Jian Chen and the others only stayed in that inn for another day before a whole platoon of soldiers and their Class 4 magical beast mounts came riding into Fengyang City. There were a total of 50 of them, and they all wore black armor. When the city soldiers saw the Class 4 magical beasts, they didn't dare stop them. Without even questioning them, the city soldiers opened up the gates to let them into the city. The group of 50 stampeded through the streets of Fengyang City before finally coming to a stop right outside the inn. Dismounting, they all strode into the inn and headed straight to Jian Chen's room. "We pay our respects to the Imperial Protector." The soldiers bent down in salute as they greeted Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes swept over the black-armored soldiers and then to the one leading the troop, "Qin Wujian, you arrived quickly, I see. If it is the command of the honored Imperial Protector, then your servant would not dare hesitate to command my soldiers here at once." The armored man replied. He was one of the commanders from the Qinhuang Kingdom, Qin Wujian. "Prepare a carriage and make the arrangements to transfer my auntie's coffin back to the Jessen Kingdom," Jian Chen instructed. In order to bring Bai Yunhai's coffin back to the Jessen Kingdom, Jian Chen had decided to use a carriage to transport her back. It would serve as a way to honor Bai Yunhai and it would be the proper way to transport her back home. A matter like this shouldn't be haphazardly arranged, so Jian Chen thought of the best way to resolve the matter. Chapter 578, An Impressive Burial. 2. It did not take too long for a grand carriage to come to a stop right in front of the inn. One could tell that this carriage was brand new just by looking at it. It was particularly pretty and had plenty of flowers on it, like it was a carriage decorated for a festival. Jian Chen could be seen carrying the coffin of Bai Yunhai out of the inn before he carefully placed it into the carriage. The carriage had previously been rented with a single Class 1 magical beast, but the beast had quickly been replaced with 9 Class 4 magical beasts. That had been a major change for the inhabitants of Fengyang City at the very least. They had never heard of anyone using a Class 4 magical beast as a mount before. After everything was finished, the group wasted no more time staying within the city. They slowly urged the carriage out from the city. Many of them chose to walk, but at least 50 of the Eastern Deity Sword soldiers remained seated on top of their Class 4 magical beast mounts. Like loyal guards, they protected the carriage from both sides as it traveled down the roads, amid the people who talked about them. Such a gathering was unprecedented within Fengyang City. Even the merchants and mercenaries that had been to plenty of cities felt stunned. Quickly moving out of the way when the carriage drew near, they all clearly saw the Class 4 magical beasts. The people that owned them were definitely not people they could afford to mess with. The carriage and the men guarding it left Fengyang City in a hurry, and now with a complete troop formation ready to pull the carriage, they traveled even faster. In a decent amount of time, the carriage arrived back within Jessan Kingdom. Jian Chen had not forgotten about the head of the Yun family. He had a squadron of soldiers look after him from behind the carriage. This short journey had taken roughly 7 days before they arrived back at Lore City within the Jessan Kingdom. These 7 days had not been much to Jian Chen, Ming Dong, or the other soldiers, but for Bai Lian and Bai Yuntian, who were not used to traveling long distances, their faces had grown sagged and weary halfway through the journey. Even after returning home, Bai Yuntian disregarded her weary body and sought out the assistant housekeeper of the Changyang clan to arrange Bai Yunhai's funeral. When he had heard the news, the assistant housekeeper looked hesitant. "Fourth lady, having a funeral for an outsider shortly after our Changyang clan was refurbished would be a little inappropriate. The elders of the clan will most likely not agree to such a thing." Bai Yuntian's face grew dark as she said, "What outsider? This is my sister. Assistant housekeeper Su, you will make the arrangements at once." The man found himself stuck between a rock and a hard place. The Changyang clan was not some sort of two-bit clan. They were a clan of nobles within the Jessan Kingdom. Having a funeral for an outsider was something the assistant housekeeper found inappropriate. "Did you hear what my mother said? What is so inappropriate about burying my auntie here? Hurry up and make the preparations." Jian Chen suddenly came toward them, giving the man a sharp glare. After being hit by the angry eyes of Jian Chen, the assistant housekeeper began to tremble. "Yes. 1,000 pardons, fourth master. This servant will make the preparations right away." When Jian Chen had spoke up, the man didn't dare to speak back to him. Jian Chen held the highest position within the Changyang clan, and the man was more than aware of it. The honor and glory that the Changyang clan had obtained was solely due to Jian Chen's contributions. When Jian Chen spoke, not a single person, not even the elders of the clan, would dare speak a word that would conflict with his own. Under the management of the assistant housekeeper, the imperial guards and servants of the clan immediately moved into action to prepare for a funeral and the necessary arrangements. In the end, it had been Chang Wuji himself that came forward to give advice to the others. Under the combined efforts of hundreds, it had taken half a day before everything was complete. Bai Yunhai's coffin had fresh flowers arranged all around it. Bai Yuntian had hung a scroll with her sister's likeness on it from the memories of years ago. From the image, Bai Yunhai looked to be a very regal person, and one could see the very close similarities between she and Bai Yuntian because of the vividness of the image. The only defect in the image was on the face of Bai Yunhai. There was a rather malicious scar. After everything was done, a ceremonious burial project began. The rest of Lore City found the burial ceremony rather strange and confusing since it was arranged during a prosperous time for the Changyang clan. At the same time, it caused a ripple of gossip to resonate across Lore City. In a flash, the head of the other 3 major clans of Lore City came to visit and inquire what in the world had happened. At the same time, several of the smaller factions came by as well to express their sympathies. They also hoped that they could join the funeral themselves and earn them some small favors from the clan. After the second day of the funeral, the king of the Jessan Kingdom came to Lore City along with his commander, Bai Dao, and roughly 500 soldiers. Even the headmaster of Kargath Academy, Kafir, had been informed and flew from his academy to visit. With the peculiar status of the Changyang clan, the entire future of the Jessan Kingdom was now relying upon the clan. Now that a funeral had suddenly popped up in the clan, the entire city had been startled and wondered just which important person had left the world. For that reason, the major powers of the kingdom came rushing on over. When they all realized that it was Bai Yuntian's long-separated sister, they all let out a secret sigh of relief. Bai Dao on the other hand still felt rather depressed. News of the funeral quickly made its way around the area, and soon, the many factions of the Jessan Kingdom were made aware of the happenings within the Changyang clan. This had prompted plenty of important figures to come flying to Lore City to express their sympathies. Even the 2 grand elders of the Huayun sect came by in person. One reason they came was to express their condolences, the other reason was to give their apologies for what had transpired between them and Jian Chen all those years ago. They even brought along a hefty sum to help their apology. In short, the funeral of Bai Yunhai was very important. Not only did the major factions of the Jessen kingdom come to visit, the king himself came to pay his respects. The funeral continued for 7 whole days before wrapping up. This time, Bai Yunhai's grave was no longer in a desolate place like before. Instead it was in the courtyard where Bai Yuntian lived within the compound. A jewel made specifically for the purpose of feng shui had been affixed to Bai Yunhai's grave, and had made the grave into a very grandiose one. With the funeral ending, every visiting party slowly went back home. Only Bai Dao was left remaining within the household. Like a statue, he remained upright in front of Bai Yunhai's grave for 3 days without moving, but his face revealed pain. Bai Dao and Bai Yuntian were both siblings under the same parents, meaning that the parents of Bai Yunhai were also the very same parents of Bai Dao. Not only did they have the cleanest blood ties, he and Bai Yunhai had also been very close playmates since they were young. Sister Yunhai, I never thought that you survived that day as well, and in a neighboring city as well. Why did I not hear about you sooner? If I had known, I would have gathered the 3 of us together to live. But, now we are separated once more by the borders of yin and yang. Bai Dao's eyes stared sorrowfully at the grave as he whispered to it. Bai Yuntian pulled Bai Lian's arm to him, brother, this the daughter that Sister Yunhai left behind. Her name is Bai Lian. Bai Lian, this is your uncle. Looking to the armor-wearing Bai Dao, Bai Lian let out a filial-sounding phrase, uncle. Bai Dao's eyes finally tore themselves from the grave to look to the 18-year-old Bai Lian with complicated emotions. After a moment of silence, he finally said, although my younger sister Bai Yunhai has left us, she left behind a child for us. Bai Lian. You needn't worry. Your uncle will protect you from now on. For the first time in forever, Bai Lian felt that she finally had a warm family that cared and loved her. A family that could protect her. A family that was completely different than the Yun family. Tears began to fall from her eyes because of her new family. Bai Dao looked back to the grave of Yunhai once more. Where is the murderer of Yunhai? He has been locked within the tinder house. We don't wish for him to die so easily, so we left him there for the time being. Jian Chen responded. Bai Lian had already given the captive the antidote to the poison he had been administered, so he was in no danger of dying from it just yet. Jian Chen hesitated when he saw Bai Dao swiftly turn to walk to the tinder house. Uncle, don't let him die so easily. I know. Bai Dao didn't even bother to turn around to respond. He quickly walked out of Jian Chen's sight. Not long after his disappearance, a miserable wail could be heard coming from within the Changyang clan. It was such a pain-filled wail that everyone that heard it could tell that that person was being tortured. In the blink of an eye, half a month passed, and the funeral that had been held within the Changyang clan finally died down and was soon forgotten by everyone. Even Bai Lian and Bai Yuntian found the pain in their hearts slowly dull, but despite that, a smile could hardly be seen on their faces. Bai Dao stayed within Changyang Manor for another half-month during this time. The hatred he felt for the one that killed Bai Yunhai had been etched within his bones, and every day he would use the cruelest methods he knew in order to treat the head of the Yun family to a hell of pain. After exhausting all the methods he knew on the man's body, Bai Dao had then given the man an excruciatingly slow death. Once dead, he threw out the man's body into the plains for the wild animals to eat. What the man had suffered while alive and dead could be described to be the worst experience to feel on the continent. After the death of the head of the Yun family, the vendetta for Bai Yunhai had finally reached an end. Bai Dao didn't stay much longer after that and had left for the imperial palace the day after. After Bai Dao left, Jian Chen and the others gathered together along with his parents and the others from the clan. They were preparing to leave the compound to continue to develop the flame mercenaries. Cousin, please let me go with you. Suddenly, Bai Lian asked to join Jian Chen with an earnest look on her face. Chapter 579, Carnage. Mercenaries. Puzzled, Jian Chen looked to Bai Lian. Bai Lian, the road I walk is very terrifying and fraught with dangerous and gruesome deaths. A young woman like you shouldn't involve yourself with such a lifestyle. After these few days, Jian Chen had slowly warmed up to her and had even started to consider her a sister. Liener, the continent is very dangerous with very few safe sanctuaries. You shouldn't travel outside, stay here in Changyang Manor, no one will mistreat you here. Bai Yuntian explained. Bai Lian shook her head as she pleaded, Auntie, I don't wish to stay here forever. I was unable to venture out by myself in the past. I wish to experience what the continent is like for myself. Cousin, please take me along with you. Jian Chen hesitated for a moment before finally agreeing to her request. Fine then. If you want to come with us, then you can. Seeing how dangerous the continent is would be a boon for you in any case. Since you haven't materialized your saint weapon, I could also give you some cultivation advice to help accelerate your growth. Hearing Jian Chen speak, Bai Yuntian knew that she couldn't hold back her niece anymore. With a warning to Jian Chen, she said, Xianger, you must protect your cousin well. She is still weak. Do not let anything happen to her at all costs. Mother, please rest assured. I will definitely protect Bai Lian. Jian Chen pledged. Now that he had gained a cousin, Jian Chen felt like he was finally an older brother. At the same time, he felt as if another weight had been placed onto his shoulders now that he had to protect his younger cousin as well. Jian Chen and Bai Lian bid farewell to the entire clan before leaving together. They were headed back to the Blue Wind Kingdom. 2 days later, Jian Chen and the others entered the borders of the Blue Wind Kingdom. Then with another half-day of travel, they entered the first-class city that was known as the Cloud Capital. If Jian Chen and the others were to ride their Class 3 magical beasts into a city like Wake City, it would have caused quite a stir. However, the sight of such mounts were common within the Cloud Capital. Compared to a second-class city, a first-class city was far more prosperous. There were plenty of people riding on Class 3 magical beasts in the first-class city, Cloud Capital. There had even been a single Class 4 magical beast on the streets. Plenty of mercenaries crowded the streets, and the majority of them were Saint Masters or Great Saint Masters at the very least. Compared to Fengyang City, this city was completely different. Jian Chen's group found a nearby inn to rest for the night before Ming Dong and Dugu Feng scouted the city for information. Tai Ta went with the two to walk around the city in hopes that he could learn a few things about the rules of society and how to survive. After the three of them left, only Jian Chen, Yu Yu, and Bai Lian were left within the inn. At this moment, the three of them were seated in the higher levels of the inn, and were slowly eating the local delicacies. While sampling the delicious food, they listened to the bored chatter of the other mercenaries in hopes that they could glean some information from their gossip. Jian Chen heard nothing of interest even after listening to them for a long time. These mercenaries talked about nothing other than what happened during their daily lives and would sometimes talk about how many magical beasts and monster cores they had gained that day. One of the mercenaries had even begun to drone about some of the prostitutes on the level above them. Ming Dong and the other two had made a quick retreat after learning all that they could. Taking a seat at the table, Ming Dong whispered to Jian Chen, "Brother, I've researched all that I could, but the power structure in this city is far more complicated than the clear one in Fengyang City." Ming Dong paused for a moment before taking a sip of wine from his cup. After finishing off the cup, he continued to say, "On the upside, there are 6 major powers to the Cloud Capital, 4 clans and 2 sections. These 6 powers appear to be the strongest that the Cloud Capital has to offer. Each one of these associations is very close and interconnected with the others. After several hundred years of development, I think that they're on the verge of becoming a single huge family with bloodlines connected to and from each power. Aside from those 6 powers, there's a few other clans and mercenary groups that aren't too low in power compared to them. Each one has an Earth Saint Master as their leader, but their names aren't as influential as the 6 leading powers. From what I can tell, there are several clans that have multiple Earth Saint Masters. Aside from the clans, which mercenary groups are strong in this city? Jian Chen asked. There's a total of 4 that I found. There's the Bloodthorn Mercenaries, the Bloodrose Mercenaries, the Feral Mercenaries, and the Carnage Mercenaries. Now, the relationship between the Bloodthorn Mercenaries and the Bloodrose Mercenaries is very interesting. I've heard that the captain of the Bloodrose Mercenaries is very beautiful but feisty. The captain of the Bloodthorn Mercenaries deeply loves her and has sought her attention for many years. They aren't a couple yet, but it is rather complicated between them, I heard. Whatever the details are, I don't know, but I do know that the 2 of them could be considered a single faction. The Feral Mercenaries shouldn't be belittled either. They are the most well-known mercenary group in the Cloud Capital, and their captain is the sworn brother of the ruler of the city. Every single faction within Cloud Capital has to give that group some face. As for the Carnage Mercenaries, they aren't a stable power within the city. Rather, they were once free roamers that eventually settled in the Cloud Capital 5 years ago and never left. Still, they are quite strong, but their numbers are lacking with roughly 300 people. Each one of them are elite warriors, and I heard that their weakest member is a Saint Master in strength. 50 of them are great Saint Masters at the very least, and I heard that the captain and his 2 vice-captains are Earth Saint Masters, making them the sole power within the city to have 3 Earth Saint Masters. Combined with the Bloodrose and the Bloodthorn Mercenaries, the Carnage Mercenaries make even the lord of the city fearful. But the Carnage Mercenaries are still relatively low profile within the city. It took plenty of time and energy for the 3 of us to make the inquiries, but we managed to find out that there has been very little movement from them in their 5 years of residency here. Every single member seems to hide away in their compound without ever coming out. With no way of income and no other property, it is a very mysterious situation. Carnage Mercenaries. Jian Chen muttered with a pensive look on his face. When Ming Dong had mentioned their name, Jian Chen had found that mercenary group to be strange as well. Cousin, the Carnage Mercenaries have to be hiding something if they never come out from their spot. Could they all be cultivating? Or perhaps they have some sort of enemy and are afraid of being discovered? Bai Lian guessed with glimmering eyes. She looked to the handsome face of Jian Chen with eyes of worship. Thinking for a moment, Jian Chen replied, "It's hard to say. Ming Dong, where are the Carnage Mercenaries?" "They're not too far away from here. Just head 10 kilometers that way and you'll arrive at a large courtyard. All 300 of the mercenaries live there." Ming Dong replied. Jian Chen closed his eyes and began to spread his presence in the direction Ming Dong had said. In a flash, he located the courtyard where the Carnage Mercenaries were located with absolute clarity. Bai Lian had guessed correctly. All 300 of the mercenaries were hidden away within the building cultivating. Each one of them held a Class 3 or Class 4 monster core, meaning that they were all exceptionally wealthy while several others were stationed around the courtyard as sentries. In the middle of the courtyard, 3 Earth Saint Masters were trying their best to cultivate as well. Reopening his eyes, Jian Chen muttered, "The Carnage Mercenaries have much more to them as we inferred. If they were just a simple power, then the Carnage Mercenaries wouldn't have been known as the strongest group in the city. Jian Chen, do you think we should subjugate them first?" Ming Dong asked. "The Carnage Mercenaries are still quite mysterious. I think we should first investigate their background to see if they have any support behind them, and if they do, we should see how large it is," Du Gufeng proposed. Ming Dong's eyebrows narrowed together. The Carnage Mercenaries remain far too low profile. Although they've been here for 5 years, the amount of information on them is ridiculously small. I had to expend an absurd amount of time and energy to find what I did. That's not even probing about their background. I think that only the major powers of the Cloud Capital know about them, but I don't know much about those powers. If we want to learn more, it won't be easy. Fine then, that's enough discussion. The Carnage mercenaries are extremely strange. Nothing more needs to be said about that. We should pay them a visit and see if there's a chance we learn anything about them. Jian Chen spoke. After that, the group left the inn. They rode away on their Class 3 magical beasts, headed toward the courtyards where the Carnage mercenaries stayed. Chapter 580, Subjugation, 1. Following a brief moment of time later, Jian Chen and his entourage arrived at the courtyards where the Carnage mercenaries were located. The building the Carnage mercenaries lived in wasn't very small, but there had been no attempt made to clean the building at all. The simple doors were closed shut and had a layer of dust to them. At a glance, anyone would know that the area had not been swept in a very long time. Several footsteps could be seen right in front of the gates as well. Jian Chen surveyed the courtyards for a while before chuckling. I don't know if the Carnage mercenaries are too lazy to clean or if they're lazy in general, but the fact that their doorfront is so dirty is quite unique. The Carnage mercenaries are far more secretive than we thought. If they were like the other powers in this city, then they would have kept their doorfront far cleaner than this. Ming Dong replied in amazement. Why don't we go in and take a look? Jian Chen suggested. One by one, they filed into the courtyards with their magical beast mounts while Dugu Feng swiftly strode forward to knock on the heavy gates. Not long after, the gates began to open slowly to reveal a 40-year-old male. The man was bald, but his eyes were piercingly sharp and there was a very malevolent scar on his face that added to his intimidation factor. Suspicious, the man's eyes glanced over the young women in front of the gates before speaking with an impassive voice. Who are you? We are members of the Flame Mercenaries here today to pay a visit. Jian Chen responded with a smile. He cupped his hands with practiced ease. The Flame Mercenaries? The man muttered under his breath as his eyebrows furrowed together. This was a foreign name to him, and there was no faction called the Flame Mercenaries from what he knew about the Cloud Capital. The man studied Jian Chen and the others a second time before his face darkened. It is a rather inconvenient time for our Carnage mercenaries to be receiving any guests, so if you could please return home. As he spoke, the man's head started to retreat back behind the door while he was closing it. Even as he tried to do so, he found that the door would not budge. Dugu Feng's hand was stopping the door from moving even the slightest inch, preventing the bald man from closing the door. A sharp glare made its way into the bald man's eyes as he saw this. Sire, what is the meaning of this? He questioned with a heavy expression. Smiling, Jian Chen replied, Is this how the Carnage mercenaries treat visitors when they come to visit? Walking straight in, he opened the next set of doors and headed into the inner courtyards. Startled, the man moved to stop Jian Chen from heading further in. He also said, Sire, this is the territory of the Carnage mercenaries. If you continue to act in such an impetuous manner, then do not blame me for my rudeness. His warning was clear and loud enough for the other sentries in the area to hear. At least 20 men came running in from every direction, gathering in the courtyards. Each one of them had a penetrating glare that honed in on Jian Chen and the others with murderous intent that was filled with hostility. Seeing the malicious expressions on everyone's faces, Ming Dong and Dugu Feng revealed looks of disdain. The captain of our Flame Mercenaries personally came here to visit your Carnage mercenaries, that much in itself is already a great honor. Yet, not only do you not reciprocate that kindness, you also turn us away at your door. Is that how your Carnage mercenaries treat guests? Hurry up and call your captain at once. Ming Dong sneered. The power of an Earth Saint Master came exploding forth from his body all at once. It filled the entire courtyard with a dominating presence and caused each of the Carnage mercenaries to take a step back in shock. Straight away, even more of the mercenaries came running out from within the courtyards. Ha ha ha, if there are guests, then our Carnage mercenaries will definitely welcome them with open arms. Please forgive my subordinates for not understanding that. I hope that you will forgive me for my negligence as well and that you won't take this slight too seriously. Suddenly, a clear and crisp laughter could be heard coming from in front of them as three men with luxurious-looking robes came striding into the open area. The one who had spoken was the one in the middle. This man was about 40 years in age and was rather handsome in looks. He had all 5 features still on his pale face, and his sharp eyebrows did nothing to hide the twinkling light in his eyes. His smile was filled with warmth and friendliness that left a favorable impression of him. On his left was yet another middle-aged man that did not vary too much in age from him. This man wore an expensive white robe that was rather regal. A seemingly feral presence could be barely detected radiating from his body. A feeling like this gave off the feeling of a wolf hidden under a sheep's skin. Something about him was off. On his right was an elderly man approaching his 70s. His face was covered with wrinkles and half of his white hair was already gone so that very little remained on his rather ruined head. A sight like that made him look like he would keel over at any moment and die. Despite his looks, the elder's eyes flashed brightly with spirit and with unbelievable depth. It was almost as if a fog of smoke covered his eyes since one would not be able to see what he was thinking. Captain! Captain! We pay our respects to Captain and the vice-captains. Straight away, the 20 or so Carnage mercenaries began to salute the 3 men with eyes that reflected their worship. Stopping in front of Jian Chen, the middle-aged man's eyes landed on both Dugu Feng and Ming Dong. They were both standing right behind Jian Chen. Finally, his eyes moved to Jian Chen before he smiled and cupped his hands together. This one is the captain of the Carnage mercenaries, Zhang Tian. These 2 men next to me are my vice-captains, Shan Xiong and Mu Qi. Jian Chen's eyes studied the 3 while simultaneously cupping his hands in return. This one is called Jian Chen, captain of the Flame mercenaries. This person here is Ming Dong, the vice-captain, and this is Dugu Feng, an elder of my Flame mercenaries. When Zhang Tian heard Ming Dong's name, his mind found it rather familiar as if he had heard it before. However, he paid it no mind since he had to greet the guests. Thus, he put the thought away for the time being. Putting up an amiable smile, he began to escort the group in. Please come in. We can talk inside. Jian Chen and the others were escorted by Zhang Tian into the inner halls, which were simple in decoration and did not at all resemble the halls of a place of a strong faction. After a small discussion between Jian Chen and Zhang Tian, the 2 quickly got to the crux of the problem. Sire Zhang Tian, I can see that you and your mercenaries are all gathered inside and spend every day cultivating with monster cores without ever going out. I can only assume that some family is behind yours, is that right? Jian Chen didn't hesitate to speak his thoughts at all. Hearing Jian Chen's statement, Zhang Tian had not been startled at all. It had been 5 years since he and his mercenaries had settled in this city, so what he and his mercenaries were doing in this building was already known as a public secret. Brother Jian Chen, you are surely joking. My Carnage mercenaries is only a small-time group that relies only on me. What other family is there to support us? Despite this, Zhang Tian displayed a small look of pain and what seemed to be misery. Jian Chen had not expected to see such an expression on Zhang Tian's face, but he immediately guessed that it was more likely than not that the Carnage mercenaries had no one but themselves to rely upon. With that thinking, Jian Chen immediately felt some happiness. Sire Zhang Tian, this one didn't come here for no reason. This time, I have a matter of business that I wish to discuss with you. Zhang Tian's face immediately grew solemn as he stared back at Jian Chen with bright eyes to await the new few words from him. Sire Zhang Tian, you are more than aware of the rules of the Tian Yuan continent. The strong feed off the weak, and only the strong are worthy of earning even more power. But gaining power isn't as easy as it sounds, it is a very long road with plenty of obstacles. Lose your footing even once and you might not ever recover. So I came today this time to see if you would like to join our flame mercenaries. With our powers combined, we will definitely increase the strength of our group. Would Sire Zhang Tian agree to such an endeavor? Hearing this, Zhang Tian and the others could only stare in abject shock at Jian Chen. Not a single one of them thought that Jian Chen would come visit them with this goal in mind. The three of them quickly regained their wits. Zhang Tian and the elder Mu Qi were both very calm on the surface, but Shan Xiong was not as well-tempered as they were. A look of fury overcame his face as he glared at Jian Chen with all the anger he could muster. So you wish for our carnage mercenaries to submit to your flame mercenaries? Ha, how audacious of you! How could you find it in you to even say such words? Shan Xiong furiously roared. Chapter 581, Subjugation, 2. Jian Chen smiled and cut in onto Shan Xiong before he could speak any longer. I believe the three of you know that to become a major power on the Tian Yuan continent requires both power and a strong patron. Your carnage mercenaries are indeed strong enough in the cloud capital to call yourselves a hegemon, but you are struggling to maintain that position. There are plenty of families or sects that are comparable to yours in this city, and the 6 families here are most especially strong in comparison. Even if they're divided into 6 powers, they may as well hold hands as a symbol of how close they are. Should the time come for them to stand together against a common enemy, there won't be a single faction within the city strong enough to fight them. Zhang Tian and Shan Xiong had said nothing at Jian Chen's words and had a pensive look on their faces. Even Shan Xiong had found reason in Jian Chen's words and grew somewhat subdued, but he still found it hard to suppress the anger on his face. Brother Jian Chen, I will have to admit that there is logic in what you say. Our carnage mercenaries may seem glorious to the city as one of the major powers here, but in our minds, we can only fear the 6 clans. Truly, no one would be able to go against their combined might if they joined together. However, there are more to this city than the 6 clans, there are plenty of other considerable forces. If the 6 clans do indeed ally themselves against us, then not a single one of those factions will sit idly and await death to come for them, they too, will unite the others to fight. Zhang Tian spoke calmly with an equally calm face. It was as if Jian Chen's suggestion for the carnage mercenaries to submit to Jian Chen had not bothered him. With his keen eyes and sharp mind, Zhang Tian had already figured that Jian Chen was not some ordinary person. Although he couldn't estimate his strength, he was able to see Ming Dong and Dugu Feng's strength as Earth Saint Masters very clearly due to the aura that was radiating off their bodies. The fact that these 2 Earth Saint Masters were subordinates to Jian Chen and sat behind him without a word had only added to Jian Chen's status, and so Zhang Tian found it prudent to treat him carefully. Sire Zhang Tian, there is logic to your words as well. Yet, that would only help maintain the carnage mercenaries' status within the cloud capital. Do you and your carnage mercenaries plan to stay within this piddling city forever? Do you not yearn to expand into the outer world? Jian Chen smiled. Ha, kid, your ambitions are grand, I give you that. Who hasn't wished to expand their might into the world? However, a feat like that is easier said than done. Without a tremendous amount of power, survival by itself will be hard. Do you think your flame mercenaries has that ability? Shan Xiong sneered. Confidently, Jian Chen nodded his head. Correct, our flame mercenaries does have that ability. You braggart. Shan Xiong rebuked with a taunting expression. Zhang Tian's heart had skipped a beat. Observing Jian Chen thoughtfully for a moment, he finally said, "This world is a world where power is equal to respect. A veritable showcase of the strong and where the weak are food for the strong. That is a rule that is ingrained deep within my body." His voice left off after that sentence so that he could stare down Jian Chen with a serious expression. Brother Jian Chen, having my carnage mercenaries enter your flame mercenaries is not an easy task. Would it be possible for you to tell me what power your flame mercenaries has, or what patron it is that supports you? Or at the very least, a direction you wish to expand in the future? A victorious smile appeared on Jian Chen's face at those words. He knew that Zhang Tian was more or less won over. All he needed was proof of power, and the carnage mercenaries would swear their allegiances. A development like this had let Jian Chen's worries decrease by one. A nervous expression appeared on Shan Xiong's face as he realized Zhang Tian's intentions. Captain. But then Zhang Tian put a stop to Shan Xiong's next words. Shan Xiong, there's no need to talk, I alone will make this decision. Biting his lips in unease, Shan Xiong finally pursed his lips together and sat there without a word. Sire Zhang Tian, the scale of our flame mercenaries will not be in the scope of your carnage mercenaries in numbers, I fear. We have no strong power supporting us, as my flame mercenaries rely only on each other. But with time, the flame mercenaries will become the strongest in the Blue Wind Kingdom, and even the strongest power in this part of the continent. Jian Chen spoke. Furrowing his eyebrows, Zhang Tian questioned, in the surrounding kingdoms to this area, it is perhaps the Changyang clan in the Jessan kingdom that could claim the right to being the strongest around. There are none that would dare provoke them, but brother Jian Chen, do you mean to tell me that your flame mercenaries can overcome the Changyang clan? Let us forego that topic for now and focus on the Blue Wind Kingdom. As of right now, there are still several Heaven Saint Masters that sit on top of the kingdom. Does your flame mercenaries have the power to deal with them? I don't believe that the Heaven Saint Masters of this kingdom will allow you to expand your influence by the sidelines. Jian Chen gave a smile of contempt. Worry not. If the strongest of the Blue Wind Kingdom really does try to trouble my flame mercenaries, then even if they send the Heaven Saint Masters, my flame mercenaries will see that none of them will return alive. The Changyang clan in the Jessan Kingdom is something you will never need to worry about, for it is an impossibility for a conflict to ever arise between them and I. A flash of light appeared on Zhang Tian's eyes. Did you originate from the Jessan Kingdom? Or is there some sort of connection between you and the Changyang clan? At those words, Zhang Tian suddenly realized something and swung his head to look at the silent Ming Dong to the side with shock. Ming Dong? Is that your name? Are you the very same Ming Dong from the Jessan Kingdom that used a Heaven-tier battle skill to wound a Heaven Saint Master? A toothy smile appeared on Ming Dong's face as he responded, correct, that person is me. I didn't imagine that even Captain Zhang Tian would know of my little name. It is a humbling experience. Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, and Shan Xiong had sucked in a deep breath when they heard Ming Dong confirm his identity. Giving each other a thunderstruck look, they turned back to Ming Dong with a whole new opinion of him. They all knew that this youth right in front of them wasn't even 30 years old, but he was already a 6th cycle Earth Saint Master. Becoming a Heaven Saint Master was merely just another step away, and this Ming Dong was also in possession of a Heaven-tier battle skill, an item that any person would salivate at the mouth for. Furthermore, he had used this battle skill at one of the strongholds of the Jessan Kingdom to heavily injure a Heaven Saint Master. If not for his compatriot, then the Heaven Saint Master would have been known as the very first one to die at the hands of an Earth Saint Master. I had no idea that you would be the very same Ming Dong that injured a Heaven Saint Master. How blind I was, truly. And Captain Jian Chen, that isn't your true name either, I would imagine. If these old eyes of mine can guess correctly, then Captain Jian Chen, you are the Imperial Protector of the Jessan Kingdom and the 4th Master of the Changyang clan, Changyang Xiangtian. This time, the speaker had been Mu Qi, who stared at Jian Chen with shock. Jian Chen had not denied it and smiled in return. You are an elder of tremendous intellect. I can only admire your keen eyes on being able to see me through. Smiling, Mu Qi spoke. What person doesn't know about the 4th Master of the Changyang clan, and the power he wields? Rumors of how the Ming Dong that injured a Heaven Saint Master being close friends with the Fourth Master is already widespread even here. It is also known that Ming Dong frequents the Changyang Manor. Then Ming Dong suddenly joined the Flame Mercenaries and is willing to take a spot as a vice-captain rather than the captain spot. The captain is similarly a youth in his 20s, similar to the Fourth Master. With these few details, it is simple to conclude the identity of this captain. If I couldn't do something like this, then I would be a very ignorant man. With a bright smile, Jian Chen spoke, then, would you be willing to join my Flame Mercenaries? The three men gave another look at one another with hesitation before Zhang Tian finally spoke, Fourth Master, please allow this one to impose a question. Speak it then. Jian Chen replied. If I may, when the Fourth Master established the Flame Mercenaries, who is it that we swear fealty to? The Fourth Master, or the Changyang clan? Zhang Tian asked seriously. The Flame Mercenaries isn't as complicated as you think it is. It is completely managed by me with there being no connection between the Changyang clan and the Flame Mercenaries. You can take the Flame Mercenaries to be a completely independent faction without any allegiances. Zhang Tian hesitated once more as he spoke, Fourth Master, my Carnage Mercenaries would be willing to join with your Flame Mercenaries as part of a whole, but you must guarantee that my Carnage Mercenaries will be managed by me. I can agree to that. The Carnage Mercenaries will remain under you three as you see fit. I won't interfere with any of your internal affairs, but I hope that you will make sure to act in the best interest of the entire Flame Mercenaries and listen when I call upon you. Jian Chen didn't hesitate to agree to Zhang Tian's request. Then that's fine. If that's all, then my Carnage Mercenaries will join with your Flame Mercenaries. I trust that this will be the most sensible choice for us to make. Zhang Tian laughed carefreely. Although he knew that he would be swearing fealty to the Flame Mercenaries, he didn't seem to mind it all too much. Jian Chen had felt rather happy at this rather easy process of subjugation of the Flame Mercenaries as well. Worry not, in a short amount of time, the Flame Mercenaries will shake the entire continent with its name. After the major discussions had finally reached an end, Jian Chen did not stay much longer within the courtyards. After agreeing to meet tomorrow morning at the inn to discuss some more, Jian Chen and the others left the Carnage Mercenaries. When Jian Chen and them left, Shan Xiong spoke to Zhang Tian with an unwilling expression, Captain, are we really going to submit to the Carnage Mercenaries so easily? Letting out a sigh, Mu Qi responded with dim eyes, Shan Xiong, forget your past status for now. At the current moment, joining the Flame Mercenaries gives us not only a chance, but a chance to return. Mu Qi is correct. Shan Xiong, you must look at the long-term benefits. Joining the Flame Mercenaries is an opportunity that rarely comes by. It is by no means a demeaning trait to our statuses. Despite the Flame Mercenaries not being too large, as long as Changyang Xiangtian is there, then it will definitely become a major power within the area. Zhang Tian spoke. Changyang Xiangtian was able to become a Heaven Saint Masters in his 20s. That alone speaks wonders of his perverse talent at cultivation. I am fully convinced that Changyang Xiangtian will ascend into the higher realms any given day now, and with such a person leading the Flame Mercenaries, it would be impossible for the mercenaries to not flourish. This'll make our own development that much easier. It isn't easy to become a Heaven Saint Master after all. Chapter 582, A Surge in Power. With the subjugation of the Carnage Mercenaries going exceedingly well, Jian Chen and the group had been very happy on their path back home. On the second morning, the three leaders of the Carnage Mercenaries met up with Jian Chen at the inn they were staying as they had agreed upon the day before. And so they begun to discuss once more about business. The next step in my plans is the Bloodthorn Mercenaries, the Bloodrose Mercenaries, and the Feral Mercenaries. They are the groups I wish to bring into our folds, and since you three have stayed within the Cloud Capital for so long, you must know plenty about them. Would you please tell us what would be prudent to know as we plan? Jian Chen asked Zhang Tian and the other two. Mu Qi had been the first to speak from the three. The feral mercenaries have an extremely close bond with the Lord of the Cloud Capital. If you wish to force them into submission, it would require a tremendous amount of power. The Bloodrose and the Bloodthorn mercenaries on the other hand is much more simpler. From my perspective, you should have those two submit first. I agree. Subjugating the Bloodrose and Bloodthorn mercenaries will be a far easier task than the feral mercenaries. Since the captain of the Bloodthorn mercenaries is infatuated with the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries, we should first target the Bloodrose mercenaries. As long as we get them to submit, then the Bloodthorn mercenaries will follow shortly afterwards. Zhang Tian agreed. Jian Chen nodded his head after listening to their reasoning. If it is as you say, then we should first subjugate the Bloodrose mercenaries. Why don't you three follow me over there? The three of us have quite the friendship with their captain, Jasmine. It'd be an easier task if we advise her. Zhang Tian spoke. After the discussion was over, Jian Chen and the others left the inn and rode on their mounts towards where the Bloodrose mercenaries were. It was about 30 or so kilometers between the Bloodrose mercenaries and where Jian Chen had started off from. With the abundant amount of people crowding the streets, Jian Chen's group had to cross through on their mounts at a slow and careful pace. By the time they arrived, a decent amount of time had already passed. Like the Carnage mercenaries, the Bloodrose mercenaries lived within a giant courtyard. But the similarities had ended there. The courtyards of the Bloodrose mercenaries had been spotless without any dust to be seen. 2 sentries could even be seen standing by the gates. Because the 3 leaders of the Carnage mercenaries were seen with Jian Chen, the sentries by the gate had not dared to stop them. Immediately letting out a courteous salute to the group, the guards lead them into the courtyards while sending someone ahead to notify the captain. And so Jian Chen and his group were seated by the inner halls while they waited for the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries to arrive. They hadn't had to wait for too long before a heroic-looking woman came walking out from within the building. Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, Shan Xiong, what winds brought you here to my humble abode today? For you 3 to come to my Bloodrose mercenaries, my home has been blessed by your presence. Looking up towards the source of the voice, Jian Chen saw a woman around the age of 30 or so come walking in. She was beautiful in appearance and quite graceful in her movements. This woman wore a dark green skirt with an equally dark green blouse. Tying up her hair behind her head was a single bow tie that added to her allure. Captain Jasmine, your words are far too serious to be wasted on the likes of us. It has been 2 years since we last met, but since then, you have grown far more beautiful. Zhang Tian laughed as he bowed with cupped hands towards her. Smiling in return, Jasmine's eyes swiveled to look at Jian Chen and the people behind him. Might I inquire who you might be? Jian Chen cupped his hands in salute and smiled. This one is Jian Chen, captain of the Flame Mercenaries. Flame Mercenaries? Jasmine spoke with a soft voice. Brother Jian Chen, you are not a native to the Cloud Capital, I take it. Correct. I am not from the Cloud Capital. Jian Chen admitted before continuing onwards. Captain Jasmine, I am here today in hopes that a proposal can be made between your mercenary group and mine. Taking a seat at the table with the others, Jasmine stretched her arms lazily. Then don't stop your speech midway through and say it. Still smiling, Jian Chen spoke. Then allow me to be frank. Captain Jasmine, I hope that your Bloodrose mercenaries will join into my Flame Mercenaries. Jasmine had flown straight to her feet as soon as Jian Chen's words registered in her mind. In an instant, her calm eyes had gained a fearsome glint to them as she stared Jian Chen down. What did you say? Jasmine enunciated each word slowly and icily like the expression on her face. This one hopes that Captain Jasmine will bring your Bloodrose mercenaries into my Flame Mercenaries as a division of it. Jian Chen repeated once more for her to hear. The iciness in Jasmine's eyes kicked up a notch as she glared at Jian Chen. Seeing that it did not seem like he was joking, she shook her head with a cold smile. "Little brother, you shouldn't joke around with such a joke like that." Jian Chen laughed in response, "But I am not joking. The Carnage mercenaries have already joined up with my Flame mercenaries. If Captain Jasmine is not convinced, then please ask Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, or Shan Xiong." Startled by that response, Jasmine's eyes flew over to Zhang Tian and the other two, who had only gave her a nod in confirmation. Jasmine had been alarmed to an even greater detail by this confirmation. The Carnage mercenaries were amongst the strongest within the Cloud Capital and had 3 Earth Saint Masters in their ranks. But now they suddenly joined with an unheard of mercenary group that had been simply unbelievable. Impossible. Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, Shan Xiong, has your Carnage mercenaries truly joined with the Flame mercenaries? Jasmine cried out involuntarily. Correct. Our Carnage mercenaries have joined with the Flame mercenaries. It is without a doubt the truth. It is our belief that should we join with the Flame mercenaries, we will establish ourselves within the Tianyuan continent. No longer will we be sequestered to this small city and forced to hide like a turtle in its shell. Zhang Tian spoke calmly. Are the Flame mercenaries that strong? Jasmine asked again as she looked back to Jian Chen with confusion and disbelief. Captain Jasmine, may I ask what the highest level battle skill is within your possession? Jian Chen asked. Although she was suspicious of why Jian Chen had asked such a question, she decided to answer honestly. 2 advanced human tier battle skills. Captain Jasmine, allow me to tell you a benefit to joining my Flame mercenaries. For every person that joins my Flame mercenaries, then they will be given a primary Earth tier battle skill to learn free of charge as long as they are an Earth Saint Master. Jian Chen smiled. Jasmine's eyes had immediately lit up at the sound of that. An Earth tier battle skill was very sparse within the Blue Wind Kingdom. At the current moment, only the experts that reigned at the top had an Earth tier battle skill. She had not been the only one to be surprised. Zhang Tian and the other two suddenly felt their heart rate skyrocket upwards and their breathing had started to come in shorter bursts. But it had been the next sentence of Jian Chen that caused the greatest amount of shock. In the future, should your group contribute greatly to the Flame mercenaries with the utmost devotion, then I will impart an advanced Earth tier battle skill or perhaps even a Heaven tier battle skill. Jian Chen spoke. What? A Heaven tier battle skill? You have one of those. Jasmine had completely lost her composure at that as she cried out in shock. Both of her red phoenix eyes had grown wide with disbelief. Correct. I am in possession of not just one Heaven tier battle skill, but multiple of them. So, how about it, Captain Jasmine? Will you consider joining my Flame mercenaries? In the case that you do with the utmost loyalty and a great enough contribution, then I will be more than happy to aware you with a Heaven tier battle skill. This is something that people can only yearn for in their dreams. Jian Chen smiled. In this moment, he only wished to quickly expand his Flame mercenaries. For the sake of improving the backbone of the group, he couldn't afford to be stingy and would thus treat everyone equally. The enticement that Heaven tier battle skill would naturally be tremendous. Unless someone already had multiple Heaven tier battle skills, not a single person would be able to resist the allure and temptation it brought. This time, Jasmine had only taken a moment to think before agreeing to Jian Chen's request to join the Blood Rose mercenaries into the Flame mercenaries. After the subjugation of the Blood Rose mercenaries were done, Jian Chen, Zhang Tian, and Jasmine began to discuss the next course of action. It was only until late in the afternoon that they left the courtyards with Jasmine leaving with them. Traveling once more on the magical beast mounts through the streets, they had attracted a fair amount of attention now that the leaders of the Carnage mercenaries and the captain of the Blood Rose mercenaries were together, and with a group of youngsters no less. That much had been more than enough for the people to gossip and spread the news back to the insiders of the city. But Jian Chen and the others hadn't cared at all for this. Riding on their mounts, they finally arrived at the grounds of the Bloodthorn mercenaries after some time. The captain of the Bloodthorn mercenaries had been a very straightforward person named Ha-Ni with a true infatuation with the captain of the Bloodrose mercenaries. Despite her indifferent treatment of him, his love for her did not decrease at all. The very moment when he heard that the Bloodrose mercenaries had joined with the Flame mercenaries, he didn't hesitate to join the Bloodthorn mercenaries as well in hopes that his relationship with Jasmine could be furthered another step. In short, the subjugation of the Bloodthorn mercenaries had gone by swiftly and smoothly. Not even a cup of tea later, Jian Chen had already entered them into his group without even adding a beneficial reason to butter them up with. And now, Jian Chen had collected the Carnage mercenaries, the Bloodrose mercenaries, and the Bloodthorn mercenaries into a single entity under the Flame mercenaries. In 2 short days, the Flame mercenaries had skyrocketed in power, causing no small joy to Jian Chen. As the captain of the Flame mercenaries, this could only be described as a surge of power. However, there was no such thing as a wall that could prevent wind entirely. News of the merge between the 3 mercenary groups had made its way to the 6 clans and even the mansion of the city lord. Such a piece of information had caused all of them to grow nervous. The combined might of the 3 mercenary groups meant at least 5 Earth Saint Masters joined together. For the 6 clans in comparison, that was a formidable power that even they found difficulty in matching. It had been the 6 clans that had been the most nervous of them all in the city. A meeting had instantly been called for with the head of each of the 6 clans to discuss what to do next. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.